I wish we just like either get cold and stay cold, or get warm and stay warm. You can. Or if not, I knew you were here. I got some.
I just want to let the crowd settle.
I don't think I've ever seen the free grass.
But we got part of the fire and ambulance company here as well.
Yeah.
Everybody ready? Supervisors?
Sure.
Call this meeting to order. Halfmoon Township Board of Supervisors, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Tonight's meeting is being recorded live on CNET's YouTube channel, and obviously the video cameras are here. Before we begin, I'd like to ask the board to shift item number 5, which is the Port Matilda EMS, up to the front of the line, so that'll be the first thing. I don't need to make any other changes. I don't know if anybody else does. I hear a motion.
When you say first thing, what you mean after?
Absolutely the first thing.
Okay,
Then we'll do citizens' comments right after that.
got it.
I'll move.
Got a motion, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Goes in seconds. Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Port Matilda EMS, Mr. Quanzel, please come up and have a seat and give us the good or bad news.
Well, I will try. Okay. First, I'd like to thank the Board of Supervisors for inviting us over and stepping in a few weeks ago and really trying to make an effort to keep things going. Let me just bring everybody up to speed as to why the transition, or why the issue came about, and what actions were taken, and so on and so forth. Let me start all the way back in 2021. We were coming in through COVID, kind of the end of COVID. We lost a few people that were employed with us. We had a staff of about 10 people. We finally went down that there was only 4 left in November of 2021. About half of the ones that left because of they went to other places because they got paid more. From 2021 until current, we were running with a staff of 4 people, 1 full-timer, 3 part-timers. 2 of the part-timers both work at 2 jobs. They were averaging, since last year, and myself as being one of those, I work in Lewistown full-time as a paramedic. I was averaging between 80 and 90 hours a week at Port Matilda and my full-time job, and so was the other part-timer. The third part-timer was working 36 hours every other week, and then we had a volunteer that would work 2 days a week. He would do sometimes 3, but he worked another job full-time. So we maintained that, and we kept the doors open, but in the process of that, we were unable to make all of our calls. We would have weekends that were unstaffed. When I would work a weekend over at my prime job, we would be unstaffed because I primarily picked up a lot of the weekends. At that point, we got turned into the state because we weren't responding to our calls. The state, in its infinite wisdom, instead of trying to help us, penalized us and put us on a improvement action plan. And we had to put a plan together, and every year we get audited by the state, where versus it was 3 years, they would recertify us every year. At that point, two of the staff, the full-timer and the other part-timer, did not live in our coverage area. The one had been with us for about 17 years and the other had been there about 3 years. They were employees, but they didn't live in the coverage area. They decided they were going to leave on November 21st. They were going to leave and pursue opportunities elsewhere for higher pay and closer to home, excuse me. I'm sorry. At that point, there was no way we were going to keep the doors open. I couldn't do it myself with the other part-timer that was there. There was just no way our call volume was going to drop. We were going to be missing calls. At that point, we had an emergency meeting, and at that emergency meeting, it was determined that we were going to close our doors. Once the public was informed through a Facebook post, which was done so that the board, we wanted to notify the township supervisors prior to the Facebook post, but once it hit the township supervisors, some of the township supervisors shared it publicly. We wanted to get ahead of it. We posted in Facebook. At that point in time, we had a tremendous amount of outpouring from the community as well as some supervisors. And we had an emergency meeting with Dave and Roseanne. At that meeting, it was discussed some things that we need to do, some numbers that they were unaware of, and we just laid it out as to what we need to do to keep the doors open. And staffing was obviously one of them, but there was some budgetary issues we needed to address as well. At that point, they asked us if we would hold off any notification until they could kind of have an emergency meeting and put some plans together. So after that meeting, we posted again in Facebook that with the support that we had gotten from the community and with the supervisors, we were going to delay it until we could possibly put a plan together. And that's what brings me to this meeting today. So I don't know. I mean, I know what I need. I know what numbers we have. I can go over that and answer any of your questions on that. But the bottom line is that we pay our staff $11 an hour, and I just can't imagine anybody doing what we do in this field for $11 an hour. And there's no way that we could have increased that to keep people and still keep the doors open.
Jack, I got a question. Have you presented to the other 4 municipalities?
We currently have Scott Woodring at the Worth Township Supervisors meeting. There was some discussion. We were under the impression prior to yesterday that these meetings that was going on, this one and the one at Worth Township, was going to encompass the supervisors from other meetings or other municipalities. We were not aware until yesterday or Tuesday that the COG meeting was taking place and that some of them may not be coming to the Worth Township or the Halfmoon meeting. So we are trying to reach out to them, but so far I don't know who showed up at Halfmoon, Worth, but obviously I don't see any of them here at Halfmoon, so.
Yeah. All 5 municipalities have to participate in solving this problem. It's not gonna get solved
You're right.
with just Halfmoon Township.
You're right. Just as an idea, I mean, I have the numbers, but, even a small place like Port Matilda, 1 year we did 88 calls out of 470 some calls, 88 of them were in Port Matilda Borough. You wouldn't expect that being, 500 people, 200 people, whatever the number is. You wouldn't expect it, but you're right, everybody's got to contribute to fix it.
One of the questions that came up at the Bald Eagle COG meeting was, what do we have to pay people per hour to retain them, or I guess hire new people? And I don't have any idea what that number is because I'm not in your business. And I know that some citizens had asked at the Upper Bald Eagle COG meeting. So in order to give the Board of Supervisors and the general public some idea of where we need to be, and then, the townships can work on that.
Right.
But we don't have any, we have no clue.
Right.
And I know $11 an hour is really lacking, so
Right.
where do we need to be?
Right now, if we were to put our staff at $14 an hour, that actually makes us competitive with most of the other services in the county. Obviously, Center Lifelink would pay a little more. But even at $14 an hour, where I work at over at Fame in Lewistown, that's a little higher than what even Fame pays. It's by about a quarter, I think, is higher than what they pay. So to keep us competitive, it would need to be about $14 an hour. And to give you that number, that would be, we need to staff 336 hours a week. That's two people, two shifts, 24 hours for the week. That's a cost of $244,000, basically $245,000 is what our payroll would be at that point.
Is that what you would normally staff at? Or
Yes.
the number of hours you'd normally provide?
Yes, that was, excuse me, again, when COG came to us a few years ago, and we were in a situation where we had volunteers covering the evening, paid staff covering the day. They wanted 24-hour coverage, wanted to be concerned, they were concerned that they weren't gonna get 24-hour a day coverage 7 days a week because of the volunteer issue. So we were tasked with going paid staff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Of course, that's a payroll cost, and that's what the cost is right now, to keep us open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, and it's hit or miss. I mean, I didn't annualize for holiday pay and so forth and so on, but that's a pretty good number that I
What
estimated.
other benefits do the employees get?
We do not offer any benefits. They,
No benefits.
none.
No
None
insurance, no nothing.
No, no. They, I mean, as silly as it sounds, but we do offer them our our EMS. If a family member or whatever would be in an ambulance, they wouldn't have to pay for that fee. But other than that, no, we
The
don't pay.
typical EMS, EMT that works at Port Matilda,
Mm-hmm.
are they, is this a secondary job for them, or is this their primary employment?
It is mostly a secondary job for, as history has shown, it's a secondary job. Right now, only one, the full-timer, is a full-time person, doesn't work anywhere else.
Okay. One person is full-time.
Yes, yes.
How's our community support? Checks coming in from households, non-governmental support from the
Right.
community?
Right. We mailed out approximately 5,000 membership forms last year. We did not mail membership forms this year because we didn't want to send them out and close the doors, because it was in that time frame where we were talking about closing that they were to go out. So these numbers are from last year. We mailed out about 5,000 flyers. We got back about 20% of that 5,000, which made us a profit of about $78,000 on our bottom line for memberships. And that's actually how our memberships work. I mean, if you guys know any numbers, you would sit down and just pull your hair out, because we come down to the August, September timeframe and we project out, and we don't see how you're gonna keep the doors open. But then we get the memberships out early. They float us for the end of the year till we roll over into the next year, and then we go from there. But memberships are one of the biggest ones that help us support. If I may, everybody seems to ask what we charge when that ambulance goes out the door. It doesn't matter if I go out to pick up Joe Smith that's fallen on the floor, or, you know, whatever. When I go out the door, we charge $578. That's what we bill for. Insurances are another issue. Reimbursement with insurance is very poor. We may make 20% on that $578 on average, between 20 and 25%. County average for ambulance services is what they bill is $632 for the county. So we're below what the county average is for what we charge. Any other questions?
I'm just floored you've been able to stay in business as long as you have. I gotta tell you, I mean, and you know, Roseanne and I did come over about a month and a half ago. We knew you were in trouble, and we were trying to come up with something to try to help you out, but we didn't realize it was that bad. Nobody, you know, set up a flare or anything until we heard about the announcement. I guess I talked to Brett Laird, he's our treasurer, about what this board could possibly do as a Band-Aid measure. Unfortunately, the way township budgeting's done, our budgets are set. We're gonna have a hearing for a budget tonight, to adopt our budget. And if we know in like June where we need to be, then it's easier to adjust things. It's sort of an end of the year, but when I talked to Brett, I said, what's the maximum we can do they could be an additional boost, it's like $8,300. Now, that money could be, there's certain rules that we have that we can deal with, but, as a municipality, but, you know, that's what the township could shake loose. I haven't discussed this with the rest of the board, I'm just, well, a couple are aware, but, yeah, that's what we could shake loose. I'm just wondering what kind of a Band-Aid that would be, at least from a township government standpoint. How long could that keep your doors open until we can try to figure out something else to keep you running?
Well, that would, where our budget is now, and with that infusion of cash, easily we could make it into the month of January without I could easily commit to that without a problem. The concern is going to be, A, the delay in the memberships going out, and B, the public's perception of us possibly closing. Is that going to affect the number of memberships we get returned? If it does, adversely affects it, then we're gonna need a Band-Aid February, March, April to keep going, because again, as you saw, that influx of cash was helpful to us. So that is a concern that I have. If we stay open, we need to know that we're gonna get memberships out, or the other municipalities are gonna step up with a Band-Aid until we can get through the year, and then possibly, if we get through next year, and then possibly get put on, when you do your budgeting, we get some numbers put together that we know we have the cash coming in on a regular basis. But at this point, that's my major concern. If I say we can stay open past January, beyond that, I can't tell you.
I attended the Upper Bald Eagle COG, as Ron did also, and I know you weren't there, but, and I know you had other duties, so it's, you know. I think if the public knows that they need to bring out their support as well to make this thing happen. This is a community thing. Fire and ambulance are a community thing. So we need the community support as well as governmental support to do what you do. And you and I talked earlier about, you know, just getting enough EMTs, people to run the truck, because two of you have to go at the same time. There are people in this community that have the skills that could either volunteer or become employees. You know, if we could get the community support up, that would assist greatly. And my fear was that everybody over there is just sort of overworked and overburdened. And I know you probably got to love your job, or you couldn't do it. There's no way. Most people walk out the door. You can't even get a kid to work at McDonald's 30 hours a week. So, you know, it's a lot of, you don't know what you're going to get into. So I definitely feel for what you guys are going through.
Is there something more immediately that could be done to get those subscriptions, as I call them, or memberships, whatever you want, get them flowing into I mean, with a commitment on your part to maintain the service, rather than having to wait for the mail-outs, and there's a significant cost to doing all that we could more immediately post an announcement, give directions on how to submit your payments, you know, on social media or on our website, or and get the money coming in.
Yes.
Because that's what you need. You need
Yeah.
cash flow.
And you can, and you don't have to actually wait for the flyer to go out. I will tell you that the flyer, if we have it through municipal marketing, and let me add, by the way, Roseanne Hoover worked up a flyer that was phenomenal. We loved it. There was some minor tweaking that they were going to do on it. That's another option, but get either the flyer that Roseanne did or through municipal marketing, which is already set up. All they told us is once we send them a check, they'll hit the mail. They're ready to go. So either or, whether we use hers or we use municipal marketing, they're ready to go. There should be no delay in that.
Okay.
Because they were supposed to have been out about the middle of November, so they're ready to go.
And the key to all of it is getting the participation rate a lot higher.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely. Again, 5,000 mailers to our area and 20% return on it.
Right.
And that
And the
20%.
insurance companies don't pay you,
No.
and
The reimbursement for insurance is, again, between 20 and 25% of what the bill is. That's kind of an average. Some insurances pay more, some pay less. And the reason for that, by the way, so that any of you know or don't know, the reason that they do that is because we sell memberships. So they feel like if they shortchange us, we're just going to write off the balance anyways because we have a membership with them. So that's why they don't pay us. One of the other things that we do, and I wanted to add, is we did hire 2 new employees. They heard about our situation. They were willing to come on. It was a husband and wife team, very young, very green, but they're willing to learn. They're willing to come on, and they were getting paid $11 an hour, and they still came on board, and they want to fill some of this gap, but they don't have the hours available to fill in for the two that are leaving the first of the year. Another Band-Aid that we have done for EMS is that we've had firefighters that have their emergency driving certificate, and I will work a night shift, and then they will run from home, and if we get a call, they'll come to the station and take me to the call. I've been in EMS about 12 years. I personally don't have a problem doing that, going on a call with just a driver, because I have the experience. If it's a bad call, I can deal with it. But I always fear some of my EMTs that only have a year or two experience, and all they have is a backup, and they're great help, but a firefighter driver that doesn't have EMS training. And I fear to put them out there in that situation, but that's what we've been doing right now.
You're also a paramedic.
I am a paramedic, yeah, so I'm not worried about it myself.
Is there any other paramedics there, or
No, just
yourself?
me. Just me. And the way the state law is, just as a note to the side, a side note, if your service is licensed as a BLS service, basic life-saving service, you have EMTs. If you're licensed as an advanced life-saving service, like Center Lifelink or the hospital, then you have paramedics. Port Matilda is just a basic life-saving, so we have EMTs there. I live in the community. I grew up in Port Matilda. The reason for my dedication is that I know in the 12 years that I've been at Port Matilda, I've picked up people that I knew from when I was a kid, and I continue to want to make sure that I'm there for them when they're sick, and they, unfortunately, if they have a cardiac arrest, can't breathe, chest, whatever it is, I want to be there for them, and that's why I stayed doing it. But frankly, I can't continue to do 90 hours a week. I can't do it between my
Nobody can.
full-time job and here. And I've done it for a year along with the other part-time EMT.
Yeah.
Anybody else from the board yet? Okay. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question.
Can you stand up and identify yourself, please?
I'm Wayne Foster, and I don't even know who you are.
Jack Bonsall.
Jack Pons. okay.
Yes.
Just a quick question. It sounds like that these people are always on site. Is that correct?
That
Did
is-
you ever use like, when I was an EMT
Mm-hmm.
40 years ago, you know, we had walkie-talkies and
Yep.
we got a call and we went to the house, it would be on call, but
Yep.
a lot of times you wouldn't get one or whatever.
Right.
Do you use that kind of service? Is that not something?
We haven't. We've just used them on site. They stay there and we pay them while they're there. We've noticed that in the past, the response times getting out of the building were slower when we had to wait for somebody to come from home and so on and so forth.
Obviously.
You think about if you're over here, for example, in your home, to get from here to the station and then station to scene. So, my goodness, so it just worked out that they stayed on station.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question. Tammy Perkins. So you had mentioned with staff only, if you were to staff it full-time at $14 an hour, your budget would be like $245,000. So I assume that's a portion of your total budget.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so my question is, not knowing your full budget, so if you look at just the payroll staff, do you know what those numbers are, if that equates out to what mills per township that would be for just payroll staff, and then what the mills would be for your full budget?
I do not.
Okay.
And I don't, because with all due respect, I don't have the time nor the inclination to get into that. I know what we need. I come and present that as often as I can, and it's not often enough, but I present it to the townships and let them figure out the mills.
Right.
I know my operating budget's $309,000. We run it $309,000 is what our budget is.
309 is your total budget?
309 is our total budget. And of that, right now, 203 is payroll at $11 an hour.
Okay. Brett, do you know what the mill breakdown would be for that? For like your 245,000 payroll budget as well as your total budget?
Well, I can tell you for us, that would be the equivalent of about 3.5 mils to 4 mils.
For the total budget?
Right.
That would be if we took on the whole burden.
That's if we took on the whole
If we
thing.
took on the whole
I
burden.
don't know
Right.
anything else is off the top of my head.
Right, okay.
So,
Ms. Miller? You have
How
your
many
hand up?
calls do you make to Halfmoon Township?
Good question.
Relative to the other townships that you cover?
Good question. Halfmoon Township is about 23% of our overall call volume
for this year. Last year, it was 18% of our call volume. So between 18, and I started to go back the year before, and it was running at about 21%, but I didn't have all the numbers for the year before, which is 2020. And 2020 was an odd year with COVID, so the numbers were all skewed with that, so I just gave the last two.
Mr. Keshvari.
Who is your treasurer and what kind of tax return the ambulance company is filing with the government? What section, what do you file? 501c3, 4, 5, 6? Or do you even file?
No, we file. For the record, I don't know the answer. I think it's a 501(c) that we file, but I don't know, and I'm sorry that I don't have that.
And you do the books too?
No, sir, I don't. That we have a dedicated treasurer. It's Ken Maney is our treasurer. And the assistant to Ken is one of our employees that's part-time. She has experience in auditing and so forth, and she helps him out, and she's one of the ones that's leaving, so.
Michelle?
One of the questions I had was, we received two different EMT services at my address. So why do we have two? Why don't we just have one? Then we could commit to one, know which one we're supporting.
Which do you get? What do you get?
We get one from you and one from one.
So you got a flyer for ambulance services for Center Lifelink? Okay. They just did a bulk mailing. They didn't go through and pick out counties, or pick out houses within their coverage area. I think, I can only speak for myself. When we covered into Warriors Mark more so than what AMED would do, we decided we were just gonna send our memberships to that area. I think Center Lifelink believed that they were out here, especially this year, they were out here more frequently than they have been in the past, and I would think that that's why they did it. So I don't know the reasoning behind it, I just know what ours would be when I send it to areas that I'm in more frequently, then I send memberships to them.
So at my address, we're like the first right into Halfmoon on 550. So is that your district?
Mhm.
Normally that would, the call would go to you.
Right, for a basic life-saving call, where an EMT would come out, that would be ours,
I
yes.
think that would be an important thing to discuss with Halfmoon Township, is who is who?
Well, for the record, Fort Matilda Ambulance Company is our ambulance. Fort Matilda Fire Company covers about 2/3 of Halfmoon Township, and Warriors Mark Fire Company covers about 1/3 of Halfmoon Township, the western third. So those are our official,
Is that on the website? Like, should I have been, if I had looked, would I have seen that? I didn't, so.
I don't know if that's on the website or not.
That might be something, like have a map
But,
to show who's.
but I know there's a lot of confusion, people think Alphas are our fire company. I mean, there's a lot of people, we're a very transient township. And so people, you hear advertising and things on the radio for Alpha all the time, but you don't hear anything about Fort Matilda. And I will tell you from living here for a long time, there's a perception that Fort Matilda is a long ways away, but if you actually click the little trip odometer in your car and drive over the hill, it's pretty darn close to the ambulance company.
We cover Half Moon, part of Taylor, all of Fort Matilda Borough, all of Half Moon, and part of Houston is our primary
Worth.
duty. Worth, I'm sorry, Mr. Worth.
So
And
you
then all
get
of
calls
Half Moon.
from like the highway? Do you take care of accidents on the highway?
So the 6.6 miles.
Yes, Barbara Spencer. Brett, if we did a 1 mil or 2 mil, let's just say 2 mil tax increase, how much more per person would that cost us? Approximately, ballpark.
Yeah, it depends on the price. I do have that somewhere, if you give me 1 second, Barb.
So, but you just said 20% is what Halfmoon's using, so if it was gonna be a free mill for a whole deal, what would we
I'm
pay?
talking about emergency services for fire and EMT. That was, in the past, that was a suggestion, putting those millages out there dedicated just for emergency services, including Warriors Mark.
I don't actually have for 1 mil. I was doing a complete total comparison, but I can tell you, on average, even the
We received a letter today, and that's where I went off of those figures. That was an average increase of $146 on an average household. It can go down as low as 49 cents. It can be as high as $639. It really depends on the value of the land and property, but it averaged at about $146 a household. Yeah.
If I may add, there was just a comment that was made about Halfmoon's at 23% of our calls this year. Just to give you an idea, we have turned over 167 calls because of staffing. So I did have a partial breakdown on what that would change the numbers to. But we've turned over 167 calls for the year because we don't have any staff. So that would mean that AMED would cover. They don't cover that often, but AMED, Center Lifelink, or Moshannon Valley, which comes out of Phillipsburg, would cover the calls.
Mr. Keshvari,
You mentioned 20% reimbursement from the insurance company off and on. Is that also the same through with Alpha and all this? They're the same across the border?
Yep, yeah. It doesn't matter what service you're at, the insurance companies' reimbursements are very poor. If I pick up a Medicare or Medicaid patient, the numbers are a little different, but you'll get they're not that much different. A Medicare, Medicaid patient, right out of the door, I'm gonna get $220 roughly out the door. And I just mentioned to you earlier, our regular rate is $578. So they're gonna give us about $220. And then when I pick up the patient and I start driving to the hospital, they then pay me mileage, but it's over 20 miles. So for me to pick up in your coverage area and transport to the hospital, I'm gonna be less than 20 miles.
So you can't collect the difference from the patient?
You can, but with Medicare and Medicaid, you don't. That's one of the requirements that they have. Now, with the insurance companies, if the insurance company decides to pay $250, let's say $300 on a $600 ambulance bill, if I want to go after the patient, I can. There's no rule that says I can't, and we do. We go after them to do that. Not much success, but we do go after them. The problem is the insurance companies want us to sign what they call in-network provider care. If we do that, then they guarantee we're going to get paid. We can't go after the patient, and the insurance company will then pay us whatever they feel like paying us. But ironically enough, they're doing that now anyways. The only recourse we have is, without signing this paper, this contract, I can go after the patient for the difference.
Does that payment usually come to you, or does it come to the patient?
There are some network providers. I will say that if you have any of the Blues, Highmark Blue, Blue Cross Blue Shield, there's another one out there that's the Blues, they pay the patient directly, and then we have to get the money. Aetna used to pay us directly. Now they're starting to pay the patient directly. They tell us when we call about it, if you sign a contract with us, we'll pay you directly. But then it goes back to they pay us what they want to pay us. They don't pay us the full amount.
it looks to me like we got an insurance company problem. We got a citizen problem too. If we're only getting 20% returns on membership, that's pretty poor for something as important as this. And just because your membership's $50 or whatever it is, doesn't mean you can't donate 100 or 1,000. The rest of the board, I don't know. I know Mr. Bonsall doesn't have all night, and I really appreciate him coming over here this evening. It's been a big issue, but weighing heavily on the board's minds for a while here since we like I said, we found out. But I don't know how the board feels, but I would like to make a motion that we allocate $8,300, which Brett has cleared, that we can do to the ambulance company specifically to help with payroll. And my caveat on that thing would be is if you have to increase hourly rates to retain or get additional people with that money, then I would say do it.
Is that that's for this year, out of this year's budget? Because
That would
we
be
did
a
budget money for
Yeah.
next year for the EMS.
We do, and
correct?
this would be a stopgap measure to keep their doors open into the new year, so give us some time with the other municipalities to work on boosting the situation as much as possible. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
A motion is a second. Any discussion by the board?
I just want to say that the other municipalities need to be aware of the problem and they need to commit to helping to solve the problem. That in the service area, there's 5 municipalities, and we're only one of 5. Maybe the largest, but we are one of 5. So I just, with that, I don't call it a caveat, but it's something that we need to address, or needs to be addressed.
We have discussed holding a special multi-municipal meeting in a forum set up with all the township supervisors and borough council people to talk about what we can do to keep the guys' doors open. And that goes, unfortunately, the Upper Baldy Cog's been, I mean, it's a good thing it's been around for a while, but I don't think that we put enough effort into the ambulance company. The ambulance company, when it first started, where you're at now, had a lot of volunteers, and they didn't need any paid employees. And now, you know, obviously you don't want to volunteer 40 hours a week for nothing. And you know, I know you're doing it, but we need to get some other people in there to help. So that's why we're proposing what we're proposing, to keep your doors open so we can put the hammer down on everybody and try to figure out a good solution for everybody involved.
And citizens can write checks at any time.
Right. That's correct.
They don't have to wait on us to come up with a solution.
That's correct. Then, with that being said, then I will commit to you that if we can get these meetings together after the first of the year, and we can sit down, we will, as a company and as a service, we'll prevent, or not post that we're closing, or we'll actually post that we've had some success and that we're working on basically a month to month, we figure out what we're gonna do. And I will commit to the, you know, through the first of the year. But we need something put together by all municipalities, and I agree with you, Ron, that has to be done. But, you know, you guys can't carry the burden, but we need everybody to participate or we won't be able to stay open.
And unfortunately, we have to advertise and
Yeah.
get everybody's
Yeah.
schedule and all that stuff, but we're gonna make it happen.
Okay, well, we'll be open, then we'll keep it open. I'll keep working, so.
Okay, we got a motion and a
Thank you.
second. Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Brett, you can cut that check any way they can take the money as soon as you can get it out the door.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
I had another question. Sorry. So, as a citizen, not EMT trained and whatnot, I mean, obviously, I'm not sure how long your training is going to require for these people to get up to speed, but is there anything anybody as a citizen can do to help you? I mean,
Yeah.
knocking on doors and saying, hey, we got a problem, you know, or,
I mean,
yeah, I mean,
those are
I'm willing to
things
do
you
something,
actually
but,
do.
you know, I don't know what I can do.
Yeah, I mean, get the word out that
But how?
memberships go out, and, I mean, that's, as a citizen, that's really the only thing that you can do, because the way the state has come in, they've legislated all types of training that we have to have and so forth, so I can't even say, you have some basic first aid knowledge, you could run with us. I can't do that anymore. It used to be you could, you can't. An average EMT training right now is 370 hours with every 2 hours of, or every 2 years of Con Ed, for 48 hours of Con Ed, and the cost to go through an EMT class is about $1,000. So if you want to be a paramedic, it's 1,300 hours of training, every 2 years, 78 hours of Con Ed, and it's $15,000 to be a paramedic. If I may, we have a med, thank you, John. We have a medical transport van that we started out to get extra income for the service. And it takes people from their house, the doctor's appointments, back to their house and so forth. It's just a medical transportation van. And we don't have any drivers for that because we started to get busy with it. And then, of course, and I hate to keep falling back on COVID, but COVID crushed us on that because we weren't allowed in nursing homes. People were afraid to go out, et cetera. Doctor's appointments were being canceled. But we can have individuals, I guess, drive that. All you need to have is first aid and CPR training. And we train you what we expect for the van, and you're welcome to volunteer to do that if you'd like.
Is there lifting involved with that?
No, well, wheelchairs, you gotta put the wheelchair in the ramp and so forth. We don't encourage that, if we're using the wheelchair, we don't encourage the patient to not be ambulatory of some kind. So they should be able to stand and pivot to sit in the chair, but no. Again, if that's something that people have an interest in helping with, I will be honest with you, I have not dedicated the last year in trying to get that up and running because I don't have the time. If I have commitment from people, I would be glad to go back and start advertising and pushing that issue as well.
And Jack, you have said in your.
How do people contact you?
They would just contact us directly at the station, and they would make an appointment, we would set up an appointment. And then we would have a driver that would be a dedicated driver, go out, pick them up, take them to the appointment.
You want to give out the non-emergency phone number since we are on TV?
I knew you would do that to me. It's just sad to know that I don't know that off the top of my head. 1035, 814-692-1035 is the non-emergency number.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry about that.
The one thing I wanted to say was, when you made a presentation at the Upper Bald-Eagle Cog a month ago or so, you had mentioned about that transport service being a fairly lucrative service for the EMS company. So I think it's important as a source of income.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there's less issues with getting the money for that.
Right. Those are direct pay, by the way. That's why there's less issues with it. There's no insurance typically that goes with it. The patient agrees to pay whatever the rate is that we charge for that trip. And, I mean, you may have the occasional patient that doesn't pay, but I haven't really had that trouble yet. We did contract through a service that sends us referrals, and they pay immediately. I can come back from the trip, send them an email, and they have an e-check in my inbox that I can run. So that's where it's really lucrative for us because they don't even question it.
Right.
We're approved through them, so they know our rates in advance. There's no surprise. If they call and say, you know, Bob Jones needs to go from house A to Dr. B and back, they know in advance what that's gonna cost because we've already set that up with them.
Okay.
And also with the training, you are a certified trainer,
That is
that if
correct.
there was a group of people at one time, we could have training in this building.
That's correct.
And at times, there are grants to cover the initial EMT training also.
Right.
That it's not an out-of-pocket expense for the individual, it can be covered.
Correct. Just when we had that last meeting where you guys came prior to the announcement, that month or 3 months ago or so, we talked about, we had grant money set aside we could use for training. We had to send that back, so that $37,000 is no longer in our budget because we had to, once notification was out that we were closing, we had to send it back. So I don't have a training budget right now.
Okay.
So,
Jack, thanks for coming in, appreciate it.
Barb in the back there.
Well, this is more for the board.
Okay.
I'm thinking that you get everybody in the community to give their $100 per household. Well, we're looking at maybe a mill being $100 or $200 per household for the year. This is a temporary fix. I mean, I'm willing to go around and knock on doors, but that can't happen every single year. And I think the board needs to really consider, along with the other townships, bear in mind that we are the wealthiest of all the townships in the Upper Bald-Eagle Cog. But if we would dedicate a tax dollar, a tax millage for our emergency services, then this is something that's solid, it's going to be there every year. And it's not something that you're out there pounding the doors trying to get people to donate. If they want to donate, that's great, but by doing this, everybody donates. And I think, even though you're really proud of reducing the taxes for this township, we don't pay a lot anyway compared to other townships.
Well, it depends on who you are.
Well, we are blessed. Our township is blessed with a lot of people that can afford it. And I truly don't think there's anybody in this room that wouldn't be willing to pay a little bit more to make sure that we have a solid emergency
That's
services.
the other reason why we're trying to get people to just write the check.
Well, this
Because
way, everybody writes
There are
the
people that
check.
can't afford to write that check, and
But-
there are other people that can write checks for 5-6 times,
Well,
and it doesn't even matter.
It doesn't matter, it's even then, it's fair for everybody if it's a millage. So that's all. I agree.
All right, thank you.
If there are no other questions, I'm gonna leave. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna go back to regular order. Let's see here. Citizens' comments for anything that is not on the agenda.
So, well, you've already talked about EMS, but we also want to, so I represent a group, Citizens for the Future Halfmoon Township. My name's Dawn Ansticovi. I live on Loveville, off of Loveville Road on Windy Pines Lane.
I see you out jogging quite often.
Yes, you do. So, so does Chuck.
Dedicated.
As a group of committed and concerned citizens, we're coming to you with concerns about the 2023 Halfmoon Township budget. Our concern centers around the Port Matilda EMS, which I hear there's some efforts going on there, but also the fire company and the Warriors Mark Fire Company, Port Matilda Fire Company and the Warriors Mark Fire Company, and library services. Municipalities, including Halfmoon, have failed to support the Port Matilda EMS at a level that enables it to continue. It currently faces closure, which we're all hearing what's happening with that. And we're aware that both the Port Matilda Fire Company and the Warriors Mark Fire Company are facing funding challenges also. Although you stated your support for the fire and EMS services, we're concerned that you have canceled the fire tax and have decreased your overall contributions by 6% to the Port Matilda Fire Company and by 15% to the Warriors Mark Fire Company. And I live in the part of the township that's covered by Warriors Mark, as do you, Dave. Your cancellation of the fire tax is counterproductive. People have interpreted this, people that I've talked to as well as others, that this is canceling support for fire services. I know you've talked about it coming out of general fund, but when you have it dedicated, then we know that it's there. We're concerned that you, as the Board of Supervisors, are more focused on reducing taxes than maintaining the community's vital services. To date, our communities, Halfmoon, Worth, Houston, and Taylor Townships, and the Port Matilda Borough, have not supported the EMS at a level that enables them to operate. This has created a crisis for our community. We know that we need a long-term and a short-term solution. Sounds like we're looking at short-term right now, but we really need a long-term one. We support creating a separate emergency EMS tax, and we were thinking maybe 2 mills is what we talked about. Port Matilda EMS responds to more than 450 calls per year, which is what he was saying, and about 115 of those, 25%, he said 23%. Those calls are from Halfmoon. Halfmoon needs to increase the funding for EMS that is proportional to our use of services. And as he said, each year it's a little different, but it's pretty close in numbers. The dedicated EMS tax will enable EMS to increase the hourly rate from $11 to $14, which is what he was talking about. We note that this is still less than the Halfmoon Township road crew workers receive, and the EMS workers don't get any benefits, which is a concern. Number 2, reinstating the fire tax, supporting the Port Matilda Fire Company and the Warriors Mark Fire Company at the rate requested by Fire Chief Witherite of 2 mills. This guarantees both departments dedicated annual funding. Sure, we can live off of people paying, whatever their announcements come out, and people support those. But at the same time, as a municipality, we need to support that. And then we need to create a special fund to pay for up to 5 people to be trained for EMS. He said it was about $1,000 per individual. People receiving funds for training should commit ahead of time to work for Port Matilda EMS for a specific length of time. Pay for specialized advanced training for 5 people, $1,000 per individual. This $10,000 contribution will enable 5 new EMTs to be trained and 5 EMTs to receive more advanced training. We know that increased support for emergency services may necessitate delaying the tax cuts proposed by the supervisors. We think the citizens of Halfmoon value the EMS and the fire companies. We want these services to be funded. When the public learns that these services are either about to disappear or not receive adequate training, they will understand that it is essential to fund them.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Virginia has something she wants
She's not here tonight.
Amy, is it my turn?
Yes, go ahead, Virginia.
Hi, my name is Virginia Squire and I live on Loveville Road. I'm sorry, I have a cold right now, so I'm very congested. I have a question for the Board of Supervisors, but really specifically, Dave, you're the one with the expertise to help answer this question. As I recall, you were the Halfmoon Town manager before Karen Brown, am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay, how long were you manager?
9 years.
So what I'm asking you, since you have the expertise in this field, is what has changed that we needed a manager then and we don't need a manager now when our population has doubled?
You want to know?
That's my question.
You want to know what the difference is? The difference is, when I was the manager, I wore many different hats. And the last two managers that we had only wore one hat, and that hat was to drop stuff on the employees and have them do it instead of doing their job. That's why they're not there. Partly why they're not there. Now,
Could that, I'm sorry,
I
the
was-
lag is,
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think, just my opinion, I'm only one of 5, but my opinion is that if we found somebody who could handle multiple jobs and stick to doing their job and not dump it on Karen or Amy and Brett, I think it makes sense. But if you're just gonna have somebody that's just gonna be a bludgeon for the employees and do nothing else, then it's kind of pointless. So I'll leave it at that.
could, I think that would be something, rather than repeal the ordinance that requires us to have a township manager, maybe require us, keep the ordinance in place, and then increase the supervision / job description of the manager so that we're not put in that position. But I think with everything I've heard tonight, just as a start, you know, you were the manager once, you know that job is a valuable one.
I do.
Maybe we just make people more responsible of keeping track of what the manager's doing.
Well, the manager.
And that's it.
Well, I was gonna say, the manager's ordinance has parameters in it which the manager has to work under and abide by. And after a discussion with numerous individuals, including legal counsel, it was advised that we drop the ordinance and rewrite a new ordinance, which I know is, an outline has been put together. And I'll leave it at that.
And you will share that outline with the general public when the time comes?
Once the board has had a chance to take a look at it, yes. But until
Thank
that
you.
happens, there's kind of no point, because we all have to agree, so, or at least 2/3 of us.
Maybe a citizens advisory committee could also be, or a
Well-
couple citizens could come in to advise?
Possibly, but not at this point.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Anyone else?
I just have
Mr. Merrick?
a procedural question. So I have comments on the fire department, but should I do that now or should I wait for the budget till the?
You got a budget question?
It's to not cut the tax.
Okay, well, you can certainly, at the budget time, we can.
Oh, you want to do it then?
Yeah, I mean, if it's something that's on the agenda at that time, people will be allowed to speak.
I know there's a public hearing, and that's what I thought I'd wait for.
Right,
Okay.
but that's when you do your official thing in that regard. Anybody, anything else?
I
Yes,
do,
ma'am.
Dave. Karen Miller, Halfmoon Township.
Yeah.
I was at the COG meeting on Tuesday with you and Ron and the other members of the COG. And you at the end read specifically from the rules of what the supervisors are governed under. Could you?
Under the 2018 amendment,
Yes.
the
can you read
township
that
is
again?
required to supply emergency services to its citizens.
And it doesn't,
And
it's,
there's nothing new here, believe me. The township supervisors are well aware. It's kind of like, and I was going to ask somebody else this question, but I asked you, what color is the chair that my mother sits in?
I don't know.
Right.
Why should I
And
know?
why should you know that? The problem is that if EMS does not come to us and say, we're underfunded, we're underpowered,
Dave,
we don't
excuse me.
know.
Dave, I'm sorry, I was at that meeting, and what I heard from that meeting, from everybody in there, was pointing fingers at somebody else. I'm saying to you.
That's your
that
interpretation,
this,
yes.
according to Pennsylvania law, says you supervisors. It doesn't say everybody that's involved in it, but you supervisors are responsible for our welfare and safety.
We're
And how
required
should-
to provide
Yeah.
emergency services, and which we are going to do and we are going to continue to do, no matter what.
We have been.
And I, as I said,
That's what I'm saying. You
I've
have
got
to
too
do
much
it, and you
personal
keep coming
time.
back, though, and saying that, well,
Yeah.
the citizens should be writing checks. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be writing checks. That's not what I'm saying. But it doesn't fall on the citizens to be doing it. It's your responsibility. And how are you going to raise the money to do it?
It actually, one way or the other, it always falls on the citizens.
You will
Whether
always
they,
pay.
whether they pay in subscriptions or they pay in taxes. And the other thing.
Correct, excuse me, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, but the thing is, when you pay by taxes, it's a much fairer distribution to everybody.
Yes.
Okay, you are relying on people that say, okay, I got this membership in the mail, so yes, I'm gonna write a check and do it. Other people just, yeah, I don't want a membership, I don't care, because somebody's gonna come anyway.
The other thing I wanted to say was that the service that we actually use for EMS for fires is a multi-municipal service. So we're one set of supervisors. Worth has a set of supervisors. Houston has a set of
I understand all of that,
supervisors.
and I think everybody.
Taylor
here
does, and yeah, so it has to be a combined effort, whether it's private donations or private memberships or taxes. It has to be a combined effort. It can't just be Halfmoon Township solving the problem. So, I mean, it's a tough problem, it's a tough challenge from that perspective. And it's something we definitely have to address to the best of our ability. Is there an absolute here? No, there's not. There are no absolutes in life. So we have to, we're doing the best we can. In terms of funding, if you look at the contracted amounts of funding for the fire companies, they've been increased. They've been increased every year. Was it the mayor, is the mayor of Port Matilda Borough, the man with the beard? Is he the head of the council?
I think
or-
he's head of council.
Okay. He so much has said for us that every year we have increased our contributions to the fire companies and to the EMS. In fact,
And to the borough.
we added an additional amount for our contribution to the EMS service. The problem I have with the whole thing, being new, is that, well, I'm 1 year into it. The problem I'm having with it is, I do not fully understand the problem. Because the problem is
They
not.
don't have enough money because nobody is funding it. And
No, we
that's
are
all-
funding it, Karen.
No, we're not. If they're going under, then we are not funding.
We are
it.
providing funding. The question is,
My other question
what is the
too, what
extent
about
of the
ARPA
problem?
funds that we have? There's a whole bunch of money sitting in the ARPA that has not been designated to anything. If the EMS is closing because of COVID, I don't see any reason why
We
that
have,
money can't go.
but we also have to have
fund for it.
accountability for how we spend this tax money. We have to have something from the EMS, a report of some kind,
Well, I'm
that
sure
shows
you-
us
I'm
the
sure
problem.
that-
And we have not received that.
That Jack would be happy to, if he had enough help so that he could be able to
Agreed.
provide that report.
Agreed. And that's part of the effort, is to get there, and to get there quickly.
All right.
I have something to add on to that. I would have an extreme issue with continuing to fund a business that is failing in management. So if you're just now getting notified of an issue for the whole county's EMS system, then I'm not real comfortable with raising 2 mills to give money to the EMS system that's a failing system without some huge management oversight.
I think you can check the Center Daily Times from 2 years ago. You can probably read this same story. This isn't news.
Exactly, it's not news, so
just
why would we
something that
throw
we
good
failed
money
to
after
react.
bad?
I will tell you, in all the years that I've been in Halfmoon Township, both as elected official, on different boards, manager, the fire and EMS have always had problems. We almost lost the fire company clear back in the 80s.
Right,
Okay?
this is
And it
not-
wouldn't be here today if it wouldn't be for this guy sitting right here. I can tell you that right now. I am a strong supporter of both fire and EMS. I have over 100 hours of volunteer time with the EMS to even help them get their building site through the county, do the stormwater management, and volunteer making French fries when they used to have the carnival. So it's not like I'm not invested in this thing.
A lot of us have participated.
We want to make sure that it stays there. It's important. I got my mother sitting in a chair over there. She may have to ride in this thing one day, and I want them to be there when we make the phone call. It does no good to have somebody come down from Phillipsburg or State College, coming out here. It's important. I think everybody needs to know it's important to everybody. This board, you people, the people out in the township, the people in the other townships. What we are trying to do is get all 5 municipalities to sit down and take a serious look at what needs to be done. And unfortunately, Halfmoon Township could probably, pass the millage and write the check. But then I got 4 other municipalities that are riding the ride, and that's not helping anybody. That's not giving us better service. That's not enabling the ambulance company to get more equipment that they'd probably be able to get if you had full community support from all 5 municipalities. We have to get everybody on board. And I know we're in a rush here trying to get, a meeting set up, but we're gonna try to get a meeting set up with all the municipalities to sit down and have a discussion and see what's acceptable to them and the ambulance and fire companies. It has to be hammered out. So we're the only municipality that has a contract with the fire company. I think we're the only ones that have a contract with the ambulance company. But we can't be the only ones. We need the entire community service area to help. So I'll leave it at that. All right, let's go on. We got a whole agenda to get through tonight.
You have another question?
I just wanted to make a quick observation, and I've voiced a dissenting voice against raising money through taxation to solve a specific cause, but even tonight I'm kind of turned around on that. My recommendation is that if we're going to raise funds through a referendum of any sorts, of $500 a home in Halfmoon Township, which is only 3 or 4 or 5 mills, correct?
Right, about 70,000 per mill.
And get to that $500 or $600 investment in our emergency services here, is that we take control of these emergency services and we run them as if they're a Halfmoon Township emergency service, and contract them out to the others who won't come to the plate and take on the problem. So if we're going to go to a referendum, which is what's pushing, my only suggestion is that we make it a high enough number that we can fund it properly and do it out of Halfmoon Township and manage it properly and solve this problem long-term instead of just short-term. And that's the only way I'm going to write that check.
Let's just
Can
get the process on,
Okay, can I make one comment?
if it's
And
quick.
Yes, it is, it's going to be quick, and I don't know, for recording purposes, do you want me to go up and sit down, or? It's gonna be very quick, and it's gonna be a little bit different. And I have to say that although I have bought memberships and made donations over the years, I really, and I have, my family has used the services. Getting involved in this relatively recently has really brought me a lot closer to knowing things more than other than just headlines. And it's come to my attention in the last week, 3 firefighters have died in Pennsylvania while they were doing their work. And so we're all sitting here talking about what we want from them and how we're going to get them to give it to us. And I think we need to think about what they're doing for all of us, and that they're putting their lives on the line, and in fact, sometimes they lose them.
Thank you. Okay.
Well said.
Go along with the agenda here. Approval of the rest of the agenda as written. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes,
Well, we gotta approve the agenda.
or approve the agenda for tonight.
Yeah, for the rest of it. I know we already did this, but let's just lock it in.
So moved.
Here, a second.
She said, Patty seconded.
Okay, moving second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, approval of the minutes, November 10th, 2022. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes.
Do I hear a second? Any discussion? Moved and seconded, call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next up, subdivision land development plans or conditional uses, public hearings. First is, we're going to open a public hearing here to repeal Chapter 31, Officers and Employees, Article 1, Township Manager. I'm going to call or open the, this is 8:05. Open the hearing. Anybody from the board like to add comment?
I would like to say that the manager ordinance as written, I think goes far beyond a manager for a township the size of Half Moon. There's a lot of things that an ordinance limits the ability of an employee to do certain things. I think maybe if we're going to, in the future, have an employee that performs other functions that Brett and Amy perhaps don't do now, or there's certain skill levels that can be done, or that could be used to write grants or whatever, it's not always defined as a manager. But having, and we did budget additional funds in 2023 for a position. If we write an ordinance for a manager's position, we're limited to a manager. If we keep away from that and use the funding to hire people as we need them, I think it's a more efficient use of money to accomplish specific tasks that need to be accomplished, that we see need to be accomplished in the future.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the board? Going to open it up to the public. You're allowed to come up and give testimony if you'd like to add to anything on this. Nope.
I just wanted to add one more thing. We can't modify an existing manager ordinance. We have to repeal the ordinance and redo it.
It's a mess.
So it's not something you can just change or modify.
All right.
That's just the way it's done.
I've been a
Just
citizen.
state your name officially.
Karen Miller.
We know who you are, but
I've been here, I've lived here for 25 years, and it's my understanding throughout that 25 years, we have always had a township manager. And yes, Dave, you were a township manager for, you said, what, 9 years? And that was during the time that, the population of Half Moon Township was half of what it is now? And now you're saying that we don't need to have a township manager?
didn't say that.
Well, that's what I'm hearing again, because you want to abolish it, and we don't have a Half Moon Township manager. And I also don't, again, when you keep talking about funds or whatever, if we have an immediate emergency for something, we also have that manager's job that hasn't, those funds were budgeted for 2022. That money is still there because we haven't had a manager for 2022 since March, I believe, was when the last manager left. So there's funds there. But again, I don't understand why we're getting rid of the management position. It seems like if we've had to have one for 25 years, that we should continue to have one.
I've
And
got a
that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
The time you were, was part of the time as secretary treasurer, you said you wore a lot of hats.
Yeah, secretary treasurer. I recorded all the minutes for the planning commission, the board of supervisors, and then eventually Mrs. Brooks took over the planning commission recording.
But when you officially.
And I was also the sewage enforcement officer. My money's generated from the SEO paid my salary. So it wasn't like the township was really out that much.
But as a dedicated manager,
Yeah.
without those duties, you were that for a short period of time, right?
Well, I had those duties at the same time, so, just for the record. Anybody else like to come up and, yes, please?
Yep.
Ms. Spencer, and then I'll shift over to you.
You're right there. Barbara Spencer. I live on Half Moon Valley Road. If you're worried about things being pushed to Amy and Brett, I guess they're really being pushed to them now because we have nobody doing the manager job unless you guys are doing it. But I just feel that a manager is, first of all, they go to school and they get educated in that particular job. They meet with the other managers, they learn how to network. They would be perfect in a situation like this to help do the research for any kinds of problem solving that we need to do for emergency service, they're grant writers, and you can always indicate that that's what you want. They have to be grant writers. Bringing people in just to do this and then letting them go, I just think that there's not enough continuity. I think a manager would really help us stay focused on our eyes on the prize. I know that this board is definitely not interested in COG, the Center Region COG, but a manager would certainly be in touch with all the other managers of all the other townships that are part of that COG, and they meet on a regular basis. And I know when I was supervisor, our manager did quite a bit as well. I mean, she was going to the planning commission meetings. She was participating in all these things. So I'm not sure what happened since then, how much the work was being pushed on to other people, but I think that we're selling ourselves short not having a manager. We're just going to be sort of floating along, shooting in the dark sometimes, because a manager does a lot of the research for us that, frankly, you guys shouldn't have to do. That's their job. And then brings it to you, all the research that's been done on particular projects, and then you discuss it and you decide on it. And it's not to say that the citizens can't have their input, but something like this very thing should be something that you might want citizen input on, or have a small, search committee or a small committee just to try to work out the issues with the emergency services. But, shoving us away like you don't want our help right now. You're sort of doing it all on your own without the benefit of a manager. So I just think we're really selling ourselves short as a fine Half Moon Township, that we're a great township and we really need to move forward. And if we do get a manager, we need to make sure it's worth their while.
As a good manager.
Well, a good manager that's going to get good pay, because there's a lot of competition out there.
Ms. Nauman, or Squire, excuse me.
Oh, that's all right. So I've heard several board members say that there is something in the ordinance as it's currently written that you don't agree with for the township manager. Can you be more specific and tell us what it is that you don't agree with?
Well, I will tell you that there were powers and duties given to the last manager when the ordinance was modified that probably should not have been given, and basically usurped the authority of the board to change operational procedures and hire and fire employees. I know some managers have the authority to hire and fire employees, and that can be a good thing, but also that can be a bad thing. So that's just one of the examples in there. There are numerous ones. If you read through it, I think you'll understand what the issues are.
Well, Dave, I have read it, and I don't understand what the issues are, which is why I'm specifically asking.
Well, the board would like to have more flexibility. That's why we were advised to repeal the ordinance and rewrite another one. And this board is different than previous boards in a lot of their thinking. And I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I want the manager to be accountable to the elected officials, not the other way around. And I'll leave it at that.
I think that there is a lot of clarity needed, and I think it would be really helpful, because I'm just trying to figure out what exactly has gone so wrong. So if you as a board could go through the ordinance and say, these are the items that we felt were mishandled, that would help the citizens of the township understand what the problem is. Because right now, personally, I think it hurts us to not have a manager. And I would just like to know I'd really like to know in depth what the problem is. So if you could consider going through the ordinance and saying, it's this line item, it's that line item, that might help us all.
Well, when we spoke with the solicitor, we're gonna clean it out and then rewrite it. That is the general plan. So I figured sometimes it's better just to scrap a document and start over again. And that way you have the latest and greatest. We're not adopting a new ordinance tonight. All we're doing is getting rid of one.
I know, and I'm trying to figure out what is wrong with the current ordinance.
Well,
From my perspective, it reads like a CEO of a company with plenary power. And I don't think that is the intent of a manager. The manager should be subordinate to the board. And when I read that ordinance, it reads the opposite. It reads as though it's a CEO of a board. And that is not the role of a municipal manager in my mind. And that's one of the main issues I have with the ordinance as it's written. There's also the residency requirements were extended, tailor extended for a particular person. I don't like any ordinance written that favors particular people. So those are a couple of the reasons why I didn't like the ordinance. And if you want to change something that's there, it's like a job description. In this case, though, it's an ordinance. So if you want to change a job description, you cannot just modify the ordinance. You have to repeal it and rewrite it. It's just the way it is. That's what I've been instructed and advised that had to happen.
Yes, if I can add to that, I think where we're getting hung up is the term township manager, because if you use that term, then an ordinance is required from a second-class township, where what we're looking at doing is identifying what job responsibilities and what gaps we have within the office. And then, once we identify that and we write just a job description for that, then, and maybe it's called anything but township manager. We identify, come up with that. Then we're not required to have an ordinance from the second-class township from the state. Then we can have that flexibility to have a job description that can be modified as we change and as we need it, and to get in what we need to fill for the position. So I think that's where we kind of need to separate things. And that's what Ron's talking about, the flexibility. So while we'll have a person that'll fill a lot of those duties and maybe some other duties, we won't title it township manager, just so we don't have to have the ordinance and be restricted from that and go through all this. So, yes, Karen.
Do you have to have education to be a township manager versus what you're describing as changing into?
I think it just depends on what the job description is.
Depends on how the ordinance is written.
And I don't know with the
job
township,
description
with the
is
manager, what the educational requirements were on that.
The current ordinance indicates that the manager shall have a minimum of a bachelor's degree in a related field and/or an equivalent of level work experience. That's the current ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
And that can mean
So would they
a
be
whole
able
lot.
to meet with the other township managers?
Yes, I don't think that's the title there. That's just somebody that we designate to be in that group and obtain that level of information. That doesn't have to
We're
have
still
that
in the
title.
process
What's
of
called.
gathering
And that's-
information from staff and the road crew and seeing, where are our weaknesses, where are our strengths. We're a small township. We can't just hire 20 people and have somebody be the dedicated grant writer or the dedicated, sewage officer. We don't have that kind of.
No, but you need to have people that have the capability, that understand how you have to do that.
Well, I understand that. I spent my whole life working in the technical field, except for when I was
It
here.
actually goes back to need. What is the need? As far as I can understand from the operations of this township, that the administrative staff here, Brett and Amy, are handling all the tasks, all the necessary requirements, getting all the work done that's required to be done. The public works crew is handling the public works operation just fine. There are no holes, there are no
And what I
things.
don't understand, Ron, is why we, for the past 25 years, been paying somebody to do a job. Obviously, were we paying all those years for somebody that we didn't need?
Remember, we talked about, you talked about one previous manager, that was Dave. Back then, we didn't have the staff that we have now.
But he has not been the only manager that we've had in the past.
He had multiple roles in the township that he performed. He was a secretary treasurer. Okay, he supervised any staff that was there. He performed other functions. Were you SEO?
Sewage officer,
Were
I
you
managed
zoning
the
officer?
road crew. I mean, I was it. Okay, so, it's nice to have a title, but that was it. Karen Brown came in, she replaced me, did a great job, and she retired. Susan Steele came in, she replaced Karen. and worked until she retired. And we got another manager after that.
And the results of the managers of the past were not always good.
No, we have to have a meeting in another week, not because we want to, but because somebody screwed up, big time. So we want to make sure that whoever we bring in is good at what they're doing. A good manager, like I said, they're worth their weight in gold. A bad manager can cause a lot of problems.
That's true of anything,
Yeah, and I think some of the
Absolutely. If there's a
issue
need.
might have been too, that the way, in the ordinance have changed over the time, and in our current ordinance, it might have been too restrictive in some things, and I think some of the issue was that maybe there wasn't enough things for the manager to do, and then sometimes that they were creating other things, and that could have created some of the issues. So that's why we want to be real cognizant of what do we actually need, and how will that be described, and maybe it's not even a full-time position, we don't know, that's what we're looking at too.
Excuse me, I
Yes.
don't know if you can tell that I raised my hand again. Is it okay if I speak now? I'm
I
sorry.
don't even think you're illuminated on the screen, are you?
I see it.
Her
No,
hands up there.
it's dark here, there.
Oh,
Can you
okay.
see me now?
All right.
Okay, so Dave, I really applaud you saying that you were gonna talk to Amy, you were gonna talk to Brent, you were gonna talk to the road crew about what they thought we needed for a township manager. What about also talking to the citizens and saying, if you have an opinion about what you think we need for a township manager, please let us know. I think that would be incredibly valuable, and I think that would bridge some of the gap that I see happening between the Board of Supervisors and the community. Maybe a survey or a special meeting, I don't know, but that's just a suggestion.
We'll take it into consideration, definitely. Wait a minute. I think you're next, and then,
Yeah, I just have a question, and that is, you're saying that Brett and Amy are handling everything and there's no holes there. Are they attending COG meetings of the coordination for managers? Are they writing grants? I don't think they should be, but there's a lot of things that the township needs that I don't think they're doing, and nor should they be required to. That's for job for someone else.
Okay.
thank you. Yes?
Hi, my name is Haesun Kim. I live in Charter Farm neighborhood. So I want to read this definition about the township supervisors. So elected township supervisors are responsible for deciding issues of public safety, spending, growth management, zoning, road and street, code enforcement, environment, and how to pay for it all. So we've been talking about many things, and due to my children's major, I am very much into internet infrastructure. So we as a rural township, I know that Charter Farm is very lucky to have a very fast.
I don't mean to interrupt, but we're in the middle of a public hearing right now to repeal the manager's ordinance.
I know, so that's
Okay.
what I'm saying.
Well, I didn't know if you were going towards the budget. If it's budget, we'll do it under the budget thing.
So what I'm saying is, the manager is in charge of the township, right? We as a township, without the manager, a lot of things we are talking about backtracking what she has done or what could have done. And for me personally, not having high-speed internet in our township hinders our township's development. So I want to ask you supervisors, when you appeal, you talk about good manager, bad manager, right? Are you thinking about possibility of adding internet or high-speed internet to the township? How to handle all that and make it as a part of. The reason I'm asking, this is a part of what we can do as a member of the COG.
Well, I think the question is, what is the need of it for a manager of the type that's defined by the ordinance? And that's really what we've looked at and decided that we would like to repeal the existing ordinance as it's written.
Yes, because the very presence of a manager brings us up to date to what we do as a COG. without the manager, we are not in tune with the cog. We are as a member of the cog, right?
We are very much in tune with the cog.
But I'm asking
Many
you,
of us hold
individual
several committee
supervisors,
appointments.
have you been attending any of the cog meetings? What about you?
Yes.
Roseanne, what about you, Mr. Beck?
No, I don't. Okay, I'm not big on meetings, so these people all have it covered. Any information I need, I get from them.
So I really thank you for your service, but as a supervisor, you have to be aware of what's going on in COG and other townships.
Yes.
And manager is what tunes it all.
Well, but first of all, I want to say something, that the Board of Supervisors governs the township, runs the township, if you want to put it in a vernacular, runs the township. A manager is appointed to assist the board in doing certain duties. It's always based on need, in my mind. Do we need a manager position or do we need something else? When you write an ordinance for a manager and you write it a specific way, the way you write that is specifically the duties of that manager.
So when you are writing the ordinance for the township, are you thinking about growth of our township?
Well, we always have to think about growth.
And that we can grow without the manager? So that's my question.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, I'm gonna close the hearing at 8:26. Hearing's officially closed. Let me see here. Open a public, now. Shall we vote to repeal the manager's ordinance? I hear a motion to repeal the manager's ordinance. So moved. I hear a second.
Yes.
Second, moved and second. Any discussion by the board? Hearing none, call for the question. All those in favor of repealing the manager's ordinance signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay, next hearing, public hearing on amendment to the streetlight ordinance. Brett, do you want to give a brief rundown for the public that's here tonight?
Yeah, I
Probably
can.
care, but they might.
So in the latest budget sessions, the board decided to abolish the street light tax. There are 11 LED streetlights through the village of Stormstown. Those that have foot frontage were paying minimum cost to cover the bill. That was an agreement all the way from the early 90s. The board has decided the entire township benefits from them. They're going to just encompass the expense into the general expense. To do that, we had to change the ordinance because that was spelled out in the ordinance. But we do have to keep the streetlight ordinance for future districts. We have to allow for them. That's why in this situation, we are just changing some things. We're not repealing.
So I'm going to call for the opening of the hearing at 8:28 p.m. Anybody from the board like to make any comments on the streetlight ordinance?
I think it makes sense, if for no other reason than public safety, that everybody drives through Stormstown, benefits from the illumination of the street through Stormstown. I mean, it's an area that people can cross, animals cross, whatever. People walk along the street, and I think it's just public safety. So it doesn't make sense for just a few people that happen to live in that area where those streetlights are to pay the tax to have them. It never didn't make sense to me.
Anybody else from the board? Anybody from the public like to comment on amending the streetlight ordinance? Hearing none. I'm going to close the hearing at 8:29. Call for the question to amend the streetlight ordinance. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to amend it.
A motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Patty seconds. Any discussion by the board? Hearing none, call for the question. All those in favor of amending the streetlight ordinance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, last but not least, public hearing on the 2023 budget. I think you all know what's in the budget, because I know several people have copies. I will open a hearing at 8:30 p.m. Hearing's officially open. Anybody from the board like to make any comments? on the proposed budget? And I'll put it back to the board for additional comments after the public speaks, so.
I'd just like to say that we put a lot of work into it. We worked in inflationary increases, staffing, salaries or wages, I guess we call them. We worked in all the other inflationary requirements. We did increase the amounts allocated to fire, to EMS, and we worked in quite a number of road projects that have been neglected for a number of years, as well as buildings, some building maintenance that's been neglected for a lot of years. And Brett's done a, I think, a magnificent job on it, and put a lot of work into it, and I'm satisfied that we can operate with it.
Anybody else from the board? Mr. Merritt?
Thank you.
You're on.
Thank you. I couldn't have asked for a better lead-in than what Ron just said. So everybody drives through Stormstown, we all benefit from those streetlights, so we all should pay for it. And we all should pay for the fire department and the EMS. I can't even believe we're having a discussion. Yes, you increase the contractual amount to the fire department. You also cut the equipment costs. So let's be honest, let's not be disingenuous and play games with the numbers. They're taking a $5,200 cut this year. We're gonna lose them. And I didn't even know what Mrs. Miller said. I didn't know about a 2018 ordinance that you have to guarantee that we have public safety. I think that just makes sense.
Well, you didn't hear the whole ordinance, but there are contractual things that have to be done.
Oh, I'm sure
And we're
there's
gonna do
more
it.
to it than that.
We're gonna do it.
Right. But I can't even believe we're having a discussion in the summer. Chief Withroy came before this board and said, look, we need 2 mills. And I understand there's other townships involved with this. I get it. But we could do 2 mills. Instead, what they got was the millage cut. That's what they got. And so, you're gonna vote on this budget tonight, and these guys, men and women, risked their lives. They were at my house. I mean, I have a vested interest in this. My house got struck by lightning, had a fire. John showed up in shorts and a t-shirt with his gear on in his private car before the truck had arrived. He was there. I just can't understand we're even having a conversation about the most basic, first priority of every township official is public safety. And we're debating and we're proud that we cut a fire tax? That is just beyond me. So these guys run to the fires, and I stood in my house watching as they ran into my house, on my house at 11 o'clock at night in a thunder and lightning storm. Never blinked an eye, never said to me, did you pay your taxes? Didn't ask me that. That's what they do. They shouldn't have to do carnivals. They shouldn't have to do bingo. They shouldn't have to do raffles. We need to take care of them. We need to take care of the EMS, or we're gonna lose them. There's homeowners fire insurance implications if you lose a fire department. We're gonna save $105 on that 1.7 mil things that you guys just cut. If we lose the fire department, your homeowner's insurance is going up. Then they're gonna reevaluate where the closest fire department is, and then they're gonna raise your homeowners accordingly. And that $105 is gonna look like nothing. So John came and said, here's what we need. We need 2 mills. And what they got was a cut. They got nothing. They got 0. And then, I send my check in every year.
Good.
But it's easy to be the hero and cut a tax. It's much harder to go before your community and say, look, here's what we need. We're in this together, and we're gonna raise taxes this much because they need to be guaranteed exactly everything they need. There should be no question. They're not fat, they're not overfunded. And they should not have every night to go, well, tonight I gotta go do bingo or sell hoagies or set up a carnival. We're asking for everything from them. And I think somebody said it, maybe it was Diane said it, or maybe Donna said it. What do we owe you guys? Mm-hmm. That's the question we should be asking.
Yes.
And it's beyond me. And here's my deal, here's my thought. And the fact that, Mr. Bonsall has to come in and pay $11 an hour, they get 0. Mm-hmm. They get 0. And they do it all the time. So if you can find $8,300 for them, and I'm glad you did, find $8,300 for them. You just did it like magic tonight. You pulled $8,300 out, Brett said you got it. And I'm saying, just fund them at least to where they were last year. Get them to where they were last year.
I'd like to clarify something if I can.
Yeah.
In terms of the contracted amount, the operating budget for the fire company, that has increased.
I know.
Okay, the capital allocation.
Was cut.
Well, no, the capital allocation was allocated. It wasn't, we didn't have a specific requested amount given to us in writing. Here's what we need for capital. At least I didn't see one.
John, was it presented?
It was presented in June.
And what
And you
was
just said,
presented?
Mr. Chair, earlier, hey, come to us in June and we can really
And
work it
how
out.
much of that capital budget for Port Matilda Fire Company is Half Moon Township's responsibility? What
I think it
portion
should
of
be
it?
at least what it was last year.
Supervisors are responsible for
Okay,
us.
that's a good, that is a good comment.
It's a really good
All
comment.
right, but we need to understand what what our contribution should be. And that's what we're trying to get.
So I want to be clear. So you're saying when Chief Witherite came in June and presented to you, here's what our request is for next year?
A total.
Right. They didn't get it, did they?
I don't know exactly what they got.
Well,
Because there's 4 other municipalities
He
involved.
presented to you guys.
There's 4 other municipalities.
I understand that. You can keep saying that all you want. It doesn't matter. We still need fire protection.
And we will have fire protection.
I hope so.
Wait a minute.
I
Mayor's speaking
hope
first.
that we have fire protection, because these guys work full-time jobs and then another full-time job. And then we expect them not only to be full-time job as a firefighter and volunteer at night at 2 AM or whenever, we expect them to run a carnival. And then people will say, well, are you looking for grants? Of course they're looking for grants. I talked to Brian the other, of course they are. They're doing all they can. At a minimum, you've got to meet what we gave them last year. And then right now, our treasurer's right there, and I bet with the magic calculator, you could say, our contribution last year was this much. With inflation built in at about 7 to 8%, our contribution is gonna be this much. That's what they want. The 2 mil cut, the 1.7 mil cut, there's an easy fix.
Wait a minute, point of clarification.
Easy fix.
You're acting like the 1.7 mils was cut and we took it all away from the fire company. It was, now I
I
voted
know, it's
for
the general
keeping
fund.
the fire tax,
Right.
but I was outvoted. Okay?
Did you want to increase it?
What's that?
Did you want to make it higher?
I voted for keeping the 1.7 mil tax.
Okay,
The fire tax.
yeah.
Okay, but I was outvoted, but I'm one of 5.
No, and I get it.
Okay, but there's a reason for that. We felt, the board,
Uh-huh.
felt that unfortunately, when people see they pay a fire tax or an ambulance tax, that they don't feel like they have to contribute anything personally.
I
because-
don't agree at all.
Well, it depends on who you talk to, and,
We can look at the numbers.
Let me just say this, we did not
Wait,
cut,
wait.
we did not cut the money going to the fire company. We eliminated the fire tax, yes, but we moved that tax level to the general fund. We didn't eliminate the millage totally.
Gotcha. Are they getting more this year or less this year?
They're getting their operating contracted
total.
amount, they're getting more.
In total, are they getting more or are they getting less? You can play games all you want with contractual.
I'm not playing any games.
It is a game. It is a game. Are they getting more or are they getting less?
Why in the world would you reduce the tax? The fire company came in here,
He said
presented
we
to
wanted
the
it
board.
too.
wait a minute, one at a time.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Crowe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm Dave Crowe, Halfmoon Township. I spoke here before, back in October, about this, and, I stand with these guys. I'm a secretary over there. I don't run in the buildings, but in Halfmoon Township, I'm the secretary over there. These guys did their homework a heck of a lot more than I did. Presented presentations to Half Moon and to all the members of the COG, and they said we need 2 mills, and that it's done by 2 mills, not because of this year and not because of whether we had this little more than last year. You go with 2 mills because it's fair and it's equitable and it's something that can be conveyed to all the communities regardless of whether you live here in Half Moon Township or you live over there in Port Matilda. Millage is the way to do it. 2 mills is what we asked for. And not only did we not get 2 mills, we cut the fire tax altogether. We cut the fire tax altogether. It's disgusting. You can paint this any way you like, it's disgusting.
I'll just finish, because I'll take my time back. I don't know how you can look them in the eye, seriously, tonight, I'm not kidding, and say, yeah, this is what you get at this budget. Chief Withroyd presented exactly what they needed, 2 mills, and then laid it out. And then your response to that was, no, and we're gonna cut the fire tax. And I know the money's there, and you can say, well, the contractual amount went up, and it did. The capital request fund, that piece of equipment that probably could have been used on tow hill, yeah, well, maybe another day.
Well, they didn't have it, so they couldn't use it.
I know, and they won't get
And
it.
if they ordered it, they probably won't see it until next year.
But you know what? Next year, it may happen again, and they won't have it.
Now, how long ago was that need identified or defined?
That's not,
No,
that's
no,
not-
you made a point about a specific piece of equipment. When was that piece of equipment?
Are you willing to get it for them or not?
Pardon?
Are you willing to throw money in to get it for them or not? Because you cut it this year, and that's, so basically you're saying no. I get it. It's not hard. It's simple
You didn't
math.
cut the fund.
Okay.
You cut your commitment.
You keep saying we
removed your
cut the
commitment.
tax.
You had a 2 mil
The
fire
tax is
tax.
still there, it's no longer a fire tax, it's moved to the
Well,
general.
why
fund.
would you
All right,
do that?
Would you like to clarify what we did, Brett, perhaps?
I know what you
We
did.
understand
I got
what
the
you
numbers
did.
from Brett.
I don't think
I
so.
got
You
the
lost the
numbers from
commitment.
Brett.
You can have a
It's
budget.
getting out of control. Let Brett speak, and then I'll go back around the room.
I personally.
Wait a minute, Frank. Brett's up next.
My apologies.
Well, no, 'cause Andy said he got the numbers from me, so he's aware of the numbers I'm going to say, so Frank can more than.
All I'm saying is, I write a check like I did last year with 500, I'll write it for 1,000 tomorrow. The only thing I'm concerned about, the obligation each division, meaning fire company and the EMS have to the public for the funds they receive, who is accountable for the expenditure? Who is managing that fund? And let me finish.
I'm trying to think though.
I'm sorry?
I was thinking through what you're saying.
So, from the personal experience that I was volunteered as a treasurer for fire company years ago, I finally threw my head up and said, I can't go anywhere. Because there is no cooperation, and I'm not gonna get into that. They were running it like a mom and pop, we're spending money, and I'm not saying they're doing that now. There was no accountability. Yeah, the gentleman said it's a 501c3. At the minimum, in being in public accounting, that organization has a liability answering to Internal Revenue Service on a tax return. So, and they have to do a 5-year budget on the form. It is not by choice, it's mandatory projection. So, if I go there tomorrow and say, here's a check for $1,000, thank you for your service, can I ask whoever the treasurer is, hey, where's the money has gone? Where's your budget for equipment? Where's your budget for the individual's training? Where's the budget for the boots? How much have you allocated?
Have you asked for that from them? Because they have it.
They present it every month.
They have it.
Sir,
They're right around $9,000 to $10,000 a piece.
how many do
And
you?
that's today, correct?
That's today.
Right, not
And
10 years from now.
right now, we currently have 24. And that's today's price. We spec'd out, as an example, we spec'd out an engine rescue because we have issues with ours. It came in at 1.2 million. From the time we spec'd it out 6 months ago, stuff went up 20 to 30%. You know, so like, and what people need to understand, as soon as you say fire service, everything is way more expensive than, you know, if you go to buy a hammer that's NFPA compliant, you're gonna pay double what you would for a normal hammer, same thing, for a
I
contractor.
agree.
You know, now, the downfall to that is if we don't buy the stuff that meets the requirements, if a hydraulic line blows apart and you got 4,000 PSI that cut your hand off, you know, when it goes to court, someone's got to answer for why you didn't do that.
So as a chief, you're happy the way the money's being expensed over there?
As from an operating standpoint, yes. From a capital, no, because we don't have it.
Okay.
We need to get that funding. Now,
Brett, back in June or July, I remember we had a discussion because I talked to Warriors Mark Township Fire Company, and I said, what was this board willing to commit towards capital purchases for the following year, and we talked about two different numbers, one for Warriors Mark and one for Port. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, because you probably don't have your computer in front of you by the looks of things, but you recall what those numbers were?
I do. They were 20 for Port Matilda and 10 for Warriors Mark. And I stressed to John at the time, because I wrote to John at the time, that was a verbal, unofficial commitment. We would come back at budget time. It just so happens at budget time, the board stayed at 10 and 20. I can tell you, sitting currently today, there's $53,000 in the fund balance that does have to go to fire.
That's fire tax, right?
Correct.
And the
That's
fire
tax
fund, and that money
balance.
would be allocated to who?
Or Warriors Mark.
Or
has to go
some
to
division
fire
between the
company.
two, correct?
Right.
That's in addition to, correct?
Well, no, that was not in the budget. That was not claimed money. This could be additional to, like they're requesting tonight.
And it could be carried over to a future budget to be allocated in a future budget.
It will be carried
Yeah.
over unless
Or
not in the next
we
few
could
weeks.
also decide to take a portion of that money and increase the allocation to the two fire companies
Correct.
to make the level of capital expenditure for next year equal to or
You
slightly
could
greater
use that
than.
fund balance and meet Andy's request, correct?
Well, let's do that.
To bring it up to,
Plus 10%.
What's inflation?
5,000 over the last, or this year's total.
Well, no, I mean, that money is dedicated for the fire company.
Right.
If they have a project, and that's the way I always envision this, if you guys have a project that you need to complete, that's what the money's there for. If you want to make an official request for that money, we can allocate that money. Now, obviously, we have two fire companies, so we have to make it fair. But it has to be allocated to the fire company. You're gonna get it.
But
Your
isn't
percentage.
isn't the reason that it's allocated is because it came in through the fire tax? What's to say where's the allocation gonna be for this year if there's no fire tax?
It's in the
at the
general
whim of the
fund.
board.
It's in the general
That's my
fund.
issue.
But
That
it's
It's
money.
at the whim of the board, whereas if we had the fire tax, and it's
Well,
not talking about.
actually, we're operating on contracts, okay?
We have contracts
We have
with both fire
contracts with both fire
But
companies.
that's not addressing the capital. It's
It
not
could.
addressing the cap, but it doesn't.
Well, if I go to Warriors Mark
Capital
Township,
has to be presented.
if I go to Warriors Mark Township and say we're giving all the money to the port, they're gonna feel slighted as well.
No, my capital was.
And they are an important, these guys are backups for each other.
Yeah.
So if
Get some.
Warriors Mark needs something, I wanna make sure that they have it, and if these guys need something, I wanna make sure that they have it. And I know we had, what, 50-some thousand in that allocation. As far as I'm concerned, we can divvy it up and send it out the door. I really don't care. I mean, I wanna make sure. I know, but I wanna make sure the fire company gets what they need if they have something legitimate. I'm not gonna be bullied into giving it to somebody just
No.
because they're asking for it either.
No, and
But
again,
and it also in that township code of 2018, it says that you guys have to be accountable for it, and we have to designate what it's for. I can't just give it to you.
Absolutely.
So, if you guys have something specific, you wanna walk in here, this is just my opinion, and the board has to vote on it. But if you walk in here and say, hey, we need this cart with a safety thing on the back of it, you got a good reason for it, and it makes sense. I mean, if you guys say, well, I just wanna buy diesel fuel so we can go out and ride around, for the fun of it, that's different.
I have
But
a
if you got
question.
something specific, then that money's gonna be allocated to you.
Mr. Chair, I got a question.
Dave, the whole thing with COG, at Upper Bald Eagle COG though, is they came up with a whole system where these guys are accountable to all the municipalities that they serve.
It's a lot better than it used to be.
Well, yes, it took a lot of work to get it that
I'm sure
way.
it did.
But you saying stuff like that now is throwing that kind of stuff, out the window. It needs to go through the proper channels, and he knows exactly what we're talking about. COG has been very good about working with the fire company, and that's the best way to
Right,
do
but
it, and
the
that's
township-
your accountability.
The township supervisors can make an allocation for specific projects.
As far as supporting them, I have no objection. It should be done.
But I know what you're talking about from
But
years
as long
ago,
as-
but it's no longer like that.
But as long as there's accountability, here's the money, pal. That's all. There is nothing wrong with supporting the community we live in. I'm all for it. But I don't, and disrespectfully, I call it a good old boy. goes back to what I saw, and I just said, you know what, I've had enough.
Many years ago.
Yeah, that was years ago.
Yeah.
That's when I was a teenager almost.
Every year at the call.
But, you know, that's all I see. But I know they go through hell to put their life through line. I mean, 2 people from Blair County firefighters died. And I understand that. I wouldn't want to be able to do their job if someone paid me $1 million.
And they're
Too
not
old.
paid anything.
But the fact is, as long as they're accountable, and I say they, mean whoever's in charge, and when somebody said, hey, where did this money go? Oh gee, I don't know, well then we got a problem. That's all. Sorry.
Wait a minute. Gentleman in the back first, and then,
Wayne Foster, just a quick comment to John, and about the bald eagle cog. Now, we have a contract, and there's a Class B ordinance or something that says that the township has to provide the fire services. Why can't you throw a contract in front of Port Matilda, Worth, everyone else, and says, here's the contract?
I have
Sign
attempted.
it.
I have done that.
Sign it or leave it.
I have attempted, and they told me that their solicitors will not approve it, and they refuse to do it.
Aren't they the same kind of township we are? So they're breaking laws?
the second class town.
They refused, in my opinion.
I can't say.
Increase
All I
their
can say is my job is to
contribution.
try to secure the funding that's needed properly, and I went to them, I said, hey, they have a contract, you know, this is what theirs is. I want a contract between every other municipality, so that we are guaranteed to know what we're getting every year. That way that when we flip the page to next year's budget, we know what we have, and we know that everything's funded.
Can't that cog help?
Again, I submitted it.
That's just
I
my
can't do any
question.
more than tell them this is my recommendation. They fired back with their solicitors, disagree with it.
I'll give Mrs. Hughes, or Ms. Hughes first, and then we'll shift over to this side.
Yeah, I just had a question about the funding, because Mr. Savillo keeps saying that they are paying the operating, but what I understood was that the capital was cut for both Lawyers Mark at 15% and 6% to Port
It
Matilda.
was-
That's the operating.
Right, I understand what you're saying. It
Yeah, it's
wasn't
cut.
cut, it was allocated. We allocated a certain amount of money for capital, okay? Keep in mind, I know they have a total capital need. I know they presented that. The problem is that capital request, it has to be broken down among 5 municipalities. 5 municipalities have to contribute. We can't do it all on our own.
But you're cutting what Half Moon's contributing.
Pardon?
But you're cutting what Half Moon's
We
contributing.
didn't cut any, we allocated money.
Cut the fire tax.
Ron, can I try to help explain this?
If you
So
want.
again, I come into this chief thing in the middle of COVID, which is kind of the worst thing to probably ever try to do it. So I reviewed the contract. Half Moon had a 1.7 mil fire tax. Out of that 1.7 mil, we got 0.5253, somewhere around there.
545, I believe.
Yeah, so we got about half a mil out of 1.7, and Where's Mark got like, what, 0.2 something?
255, yeah.
So, out of your 1.7 mil, you were only actually getting allocated to our budget, per our contract, was half a mil, would say, and Where's Mark was getting a quarter of a mil. The rest, the other 1 mil of the fire tax, went into a fund for capital expenses. And how it was told to me is, when we have an expense that we want, we come and request out of that 1 mil remaining, that just, and that pot keeps building every year, and we have to come and request it. That's fine and dandy, to a point. What I have done for the Port Matilda Fire Company is put together an actual capital budget. The concern I had with doing it that way is if Where's Mark needed an engine, and you guys gave him the money, and we needed an engine, it's not there. So what we put together was essentially a breakdown over the years. So if an engine was $1 million in 25 years, we broke it down. Every year we were putting in what we needed plus inflation. So when the time came, we could automatically just keep rolling through. The fire service isn't overly complicated. If you have an engine, every so many years you have to replace everything on the engine. So the only thing that should change would be our numbers with inflation. And that's what my capital budget was for was to save that money over time, so we weren't coming in here asking for $1 million at a clip. You know, it's a soft hit, not a punch in the gut.
You have an annual capital reserve that you're building each year as
Correct.
part of your
Not-
budget.
Not just a punch in the gut, hey, you know, we need $80,000.
You're getting a chunk of money in your budget that you put into capital.
Correct, and that's,
Every year.
that's what my whole budget was that breakdown, and there was a chart with the yearly breakdown. So like an engine lasts 25 years. So we took the total price of that, divided it by 25, added inflation over the 25 years. Air packs, 15 years, so we broke it down that way. I think along the lines it got somehow twisted around and confused of how and why we were requesting it that way, but that's how we're doing it.
Because that's how it was laid out with the fire tax.
Yes, and that's not, I don't feel that's the clean cut way to do it. Is it nice to have some extra funding, like in an emergency if something breaks, like, you know, you blow a motor up or something? It's nice to do it the way that it was set up, but I don't think that's the clean way to do it long-term. And that's what
No, you
I'm
can't
trying to
operate
solve is
that way.
long-term. So if I retire, the next person coming in should be able to pick up right where I left off, and they shouldn't have to worry about it because it's contracted pricing. Every year, it just keeps going up based off inflation.
Right.
And the only thing that I should be coming here to you guys and saying is, hey, you know, stuff went up, you know, instead of 3% this year, it went up 3.5. So we need to come up with that extra little bit.
Mr.
Not-
Wither, I do want to say, I do support you guys, despite what you might think. I've supported the fire company a lot over the years, and I fought for you. Because I remember when your engine 1519 was gonna be repossessed by the bank.
Yep, and I
And
appreciate
that was a bad thing, and, you know, we pulled a lot of strings. This township at that time didn't have that much money. We have money now, but we have to allocate it, that's what this budget meeting's all about. But the fire companies, a lot of volunteer fire companies in general, now I'm not saying how you guys are now, but in general, have not had a good history with saving money. And unfortunately, you know, when you have a disaster, even though there's supposed to be a capital reserve fund, if there isn't one, at least you can come back to these guys and say, hey, you know, we need 10 grand because we need new tires on the truck. And then the township can cut you the check and have you go do it. Now, I know it'd probably be better if you were handling the money yourself, and if things have changed and Mr. Keshwari is satisfied with the accounting process, then it's not such a bad thing. But as supervisors, we are accountable for the money.
Yep.
And at one time, and I'll harken back to 1519, the townships were paying the money, but the money never ended up at the bank. And nobody seemed to know where it went. And I'm not saying it's you guys, because I know you weren't there then, and I know that it was a different situation. But you read about these things in the paper, and, you know, we're audited every year, several times by several veteran auditors. I mean, I know we got a problem right now with the fire, what do you call that?
Fire relief.
Fireman's relief
Yep.
right now, okay? And you're not getting the money you need to be having from fireman's relief. There's a whole lot of things, as you know, right now that I think it's a good opportunity to have stuff work out. And one of the things that I'm gonna dedicate myself to is to get this deal straightened out with these other municipalities that we all deal with, so we all have something solid that we can sit down and you guys will know exactly what you need. And, you know, I knew there were problems, but, you know, I didn't have any idea how bad the ambulance situation was. And I have talked to people in the fire department, of course Derek works for us, and he's given me some rundown on some of the stuff, but we're gonna work it out. We're gonna make it happen.
Yep, and I can personally tell you, the concern of accountability should not be a concern. Because all that money would be tax money, it would be managed by each municipality member.
Yep.
So your
Well,
guys'
I had the fire chief
you
stand there and
guys would
just
have
out
to
and
do
lie
that.
to me and say, yeah, we paid the bank. And, you know, and I'm not saying it's you guys, but I've been through that. And then when they needed the money, there was no money. And I wanna make sure the money is there for you when you have something important. And I'll let you talk, and I'm sorry. Well, actually, let me shift over here first.
Yep, that's fine. Oh, I think
Michelle,
that's fine.
okay.
Move on.
Ms. Perkins?
Yeah, I just wanna say, you know, John, I think you've done a great job. Yeah, I was here at the meeting when you were here over the summer and you laid out your plans very clearly. And clearly you're dedicated to, proper accounting and responsibility for the money. And I know there's a few people in the audience that wanna revert back to what happened a few years ago. Clearly, John is not that kind of person. And so I think going forward here as a township, we need to really give support to the fire department. We also need to give support to the EMS. And I'd like the board to reinstate that 2-point mill for the fire department.
Yes.
And a millage for the emergency.
It's done, it's a solid
Well, we had a
commitment.
1.7 mil.
It's,
Fire code.
let's make it 2, okay? Let's make it 2. Let's give EMS 1, okay? But it's a solid commitment from the township to the fire department so that they know year to year what they're gonna have,
Well, I don't
instead of a
know-
guessing game.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but my concern is that the other municipalities, I see what's happening in terms of, they're not keeping up. There's
We need to
diminishing
lead by
returns.
example.
Well, we've been
to
doing
lead
that,
by
and we've
example.
seen diminishing returns from the other municipalities.
So then you cut the taxes just to show them.
No, we didn't.
You're hurting, but
hurting
by
us.
doing what you're saying
You're hurting us.
but I hear what you're saying, Ron, and
Jeopardizing our
I,
welfare.
Wait a minute. Ms. Perkins has the floor.
Ron, I hear what you're saying in terms of the other townships. I agree, they need to step up to the plate as well, okay? But it is not our job to penalize the fire department. It is not our job to penalize the EMS because other townships won't step up to the plate. We have more money in this township. We need to be a leader. We need to set the pace and we need to do it. That's for our community.
And everyone.
And I
here-
think then we go to the other townships and say, look, this is what we'd like you to do as part of the COG as well in supporting our fire
I
department.
understand. I did want to say, John, I do agree with your approach to budgeting. Okay, that it incorporates operating and capital together. It's all represented there. And the allocation should be based on that total budget. Okay, so I do agree with that,
Yep,
that aspect of it.
and I do need to clear something up since it is televised. The money,
It's already out there.
the money that comes in, any tax money, we can't spend without your guys' representatives' authorization. So I cannot go out and say, hey, we're gonna spend this, so that's why I'm saying, any concerns of money, it's all managed by this Upper Bald Eagle Halfmoon COG. You know, I cannot go spend money. So there should be no concern of that.
So I have a question, point of order on budget allocation. What is the percentage that we can increase a budget line item at this point in our budgeting process?
Give them 15%, come on.
At this point, and I'm completely off guard, I think it's 10% at this point. But there are other alternatives we could do this year to help next year with the budget as it is. For instance, the board has the 53 in fire, but we also, in the lead memo to the budget, we do have the deficit spend money. The board could give the EMS and fire some of that next year, as long as that's what they decide to do. There are other options.
Yeah.
While we do that, that's when we can get a new contract, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, you are
Yes.
interested in renegotiating.
Yep, so
We can get the fire tax or whatever other taxation the boards may so choose under handle. It gives you another year, but it also helps solve the problem right now. Those are really our options as we said.
But that's a separate, that's not, we would not be revising the budget as it sits right
The
now.
problem we have now is we're almost out of time, because we would have to re-advertise. If you decide to not pass this tonight, you would have to re-advertise, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Amy's 30 more days.
But I'll tell you what we could do, we could allocate the tax money this year to the
Dave.
2 fire companies.
Dave, I think Zach wants to.
Oh, I didn't even know he was
Yeah, I
on.
didn't want to say
Hi.
something, but like Ron, in response to Ron's question, and Brett hit on a portion of the answer, but the second class township code authorizes revisions to the proposed budget that would not necessitate re-advertisement if it's less than 10% of an increase in the aggregate or 25% for one particular line item.
Okay.
So the 10% that Brett referenced is in the aggregate on the whole. So the increase can't be more than 10% on the whole, but you can make an amendment to a particular line item as long as it's not in excess of 25%.
So we could match this year's capital spending with an additional inflationary factor on top of that, probably.
We can.
In the aggregate, 10% is,
Well, we're not worried about aggregate. That's why I couldn't remember the
We
percentage.
can do 25%. What is the total distribution for the fire company this year? For the current year?
For the current year, it's, Andy, do you happen to have?
I don't have it. I don't have it.
That's the one form I don't have on.
I know it's
me.
20,000 on capital, and I want to say it's, gosh.
the total
I
went
put it
down
online.
approximately 10%. Operating capital.
If you
total.
look at percentages, based on the percentages that have been thrown around, it's 6. And Derek has it. Hold on 1 second, Dave. So this year, in 2022, we were giving a grand total to both fire companies, $117,848.68.
That's everything, operating and
That's for
capital.
Boyers Mark, everything. In 2023, that decreased to $107,317.32, and that was in the capital request funding to both fire departments.
Okay.
You could increase that back up and still mathematically be.
Right, 25% is gonna be about $25,000.
Right, you should be able to.
All right, now, we're in a hearing right now, and we have to close the hearing because the board can't take a motion in the middle of a hearing to do any change. So, but that's something that the board can discuss before the adoption of the ordinance. If we want to change any particular line item, 10, 20%, whatever it is, 25%.
Correct.
Would anybody else like to throw anything else? I think we got your point on the
I
fire.
just want to make sure that both you're considering increasing the line item for the fire department and the EMS.
We already did
We just did the EMS.
They got 8,300.
Right.
Well, they got 8,300 of this year's money.
That's, right, and that's the
Right.
short run solution, yeah.
Right, well, we're trying to keep their doors open, obviously.
Yeah.
So, all right.
I have a question.
Yes,
Has
please.
there been anything in the budget specifically for the fire department then, that we pay our fair share, Halfmoon, but they also have to make the other municipalities pay their fair share?
We cannot make them do anything. They are an independent township of the second class, the
So
same
are
as
you
us.
lacking funds because they're not paying their share?
So, again, I come in middle of COVID, and there has never really been a detailed breakdown of stuff that we needed long-term. The operating budget has always been relatively close to what we need. At this point, it's across the board. Like Ron had hit on, Halfmoon is paying a little bit more. However, there's other municipalities,
I'm sorry, more percentage-wise or more
dollar-wise.
dollar-wise?
Okay. There is some other municipalities that pay on a per capita, they're paying more, but the dollar is less. I have been to every board and I did the same speech. We're trying to get it fair across the board. However, we're struggling, we're fighting. And, here we are. So I didn't expect every board to come up and say, yep, hey, that's what you need, that looks great, we'll write you a check tomorrow. Honestly, what I expected was hey, we can't do that, let's sit down, let's do a 5-year plan. And I'm fine with that, because it's not like we need to replace everything in 3 years. So I'm willing to work with everyone. But the last 4 meetings at COG, and when I ask, hey, where do we stand? You could hear the crickets chirping. And the meeting was ended. So that's where we stand.
Well, I think this board is committed to making this agreement work with all the municipalities, work with fire and EMS. I don't see anybody here that says, nah, we're not gonna support you. We want you to stay. Believe me, I wouldn't have come over to that meeting the other night to find out what was going on. Ron's been good at reporting back, but our previous member didn't necessarily say anything. So we're trying to We're trying to figure out what's going on, and we're trying to figure out what we can do to make it better.
It's
All right,
not
well,
gonna
if
fix overnight.
if nobody's got anything else,
Yeah,
Ms. Hughes.
I'm thinking about this, and I don't know whether I should say this or not, but I'll go ahead and say it. And that is, I did attend the COG meeting, the Upper Bald Eagle Half Moon COG meeting on Tuesday night. And I've been critical of this board for their funding, but I have to say that they were actually out ahead compared to the other municipalities. I was absolutely appalled at their apathy. No one expressed support, and all they did was want to point fingers and blame somebody else, and there was no steps forward to take responsibility themselves for funding the EMS and fire.
thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll close the hearing, and then the board's gonna have a discussion. Hearing's officially closed at 9:13 on the budget. Well, board members,
Locked himself out.
It sounds to me like this budget can be passed as is, and we can look at it then with a clear mind and conversation to make those minor alterations that would still fall under an approved board.
what I would like to do is increase the fire budget with the two fire companies by 25%. And we pulled, it's, how much money we talking? $25,000?
Probably a total between both.
And where can we pull that money from?
The fire fund still has money, or
Well-
if you wanna use the general, you would have to decrease your, capital expense transfer. Cause we have to present a balanced budget.
Right.
And there's not too much wiggle room short of that in your unencumbered, which was kinda running thin anyways. So if you want to increase those, it'll decrease that capital expense.
How close are we to hitting target for estimated revenues for 2022? Are we gonna come in with more money than we had anticipated when the budget was written, or are we gonna be right on the money?
This year, we are about 450,000 to the good.
To the goods?
Correct.
So we could use that as unencumbered funds, and we could make a $25,000 dedication to the fire company if we so chose.
This year?
Yeah, without messing up the budget.
You
Well,
would
no,
be-
not for this year, for the 2023 budget.
So you're asking to have fund balance carryover?
Yeah,
Yeah,
include that in the budget.
you could do that.
And I know we operate on that, 'cause
Which-
we are the only municipality that doesn't borrow money to operate.
That
part of the year.
is what is included in the deficit spend memo, like I touched on earlier.
Yep.
It would just come out of that, yeah.
When you say 25%,
On that line item.
percent of what? The
Well,
capital?
The total, we had $107,000 budgeted, 25% of that would be roughly $130,000 dedicated to the fire companies for operating costs next year. And I would recommend that we also release, I'm not making a motion yet, but it's for discussion. I would also recommend that we release the fire tax monies in their entirety, distributed the same way for both fire companies, just let them have it, it's our money. And if they come calling to us later on and say, hey, we need more money for something, you better have a good reason, because we gave it up. You got it. I hope you get it in a good, secure place where you've got it.
So how much is that?
Well, the one thing I want to touch on to back up just a smidge,
Okay.
and Zach can chime in here, now that we're talking about deficit spending, that 25% rule won't matter because we're using a liability column called unreserved fund balance.
Right.
So that 25% line item doesn't exist because there's no line item in the budget.
We're gonna make one.
Well, it's there, but it will never be shown, is my
Right.
point. So I do not believe that 25% exists anymore. It'll be the whim of the 5 board
Well,
members.
what if we opted to match last year's total, or this year's total, in the 2023 budget, and provided some form of an inflationary increase for the total budget? What does that look like? Because I'm not sure how much money we're talking here. That's where I'm getting.
Well, we have to get, if they had 113,000 last year, and 8% of 113 is roughly 9 grand, 10 grand. So 10 grand plus, whether you say there's a shortage of about 10 grand, that's $20,000. So if you give them another If you give them 25,000, then they've got extra money to play with,
Well, 25,000 is,
as a percentage.
we're
An
we're
increase.
talking about 100, we had allocated how much for the fire company total?
107,000.
107,000, right?
Correct.
So what is 10% of that's 10,700, which would make up the deficit? The difference between the total
Last
from
year.
2022 to 2023, we're down about $10,000. Okay, and if we, $25,000 is is a 25% increase
Over what we have now.
over what we're spending
But
in
it's only
2022.
15% more than what last year's budget was.
Keep all this in mind, if you're discussing deficit spend, this doesn't pertain to passing this year's budget. That'll be a next year's decision. It could be 10, 15, 20, something
guess it
could go
depends.
direly wrong and they may need more. Who honestly knows?
So Brett, basically what you're saying is we have other pools, the emergency money and the deficit spend money that we can go
Going
ahead.
into next year, yep, you'll have the 53,000 fund balance of fire
Right.
only. Then we had the deficit spend we were discussing.
So we don't
where we
necessarily
had-
need to alter this budget to get the money we're talking about.
Correct, because it's going to come out of money that's not new income.
Correct.
But what I don't, and I don't have a problem with increasing the amount, okay? It's the dollars that I'm a little bit concerned about. I don't have a problem matching this year's total allocation, total budget, and adding a small inflationary increase to that amount. Okay, I believe that's less than $25,000.
It'd
Let's
be
say we did
18,000.
16%, or 6%.
Again, I just write the checks, that's up to you.
And we can always address other crisis-related issues next year. We could do this, in other words, what do we do tonight and what do we do next year is what I'm.
It's not decided tonight.
Tonight we can move ahead.
Okay, gotcha.
You're gonna get more money.
the one other
Just how
thing-
we're gonna give it to you if we don't know yet.
When we do meet with the other municipalities, and I do believe we need to do that pretty
Pronto.
damn soon, I want a commitment from them that their appropriations do not further diminish as a result of our increasing our funding. I don't want to see that happen. I have no problem with increasing the amount of spending here. But it is important that we have a service area that encompasses 5 municipalities. If
And we
this
don't
was
want
just our
ABC to
problem, it'd
come
be
back and
just our
say,
problem.
we're gonna cut you $5,000 because Half Moon covered it.
And that's the importance of
I've seen that attitude displayed.
That truly
Right.
is.
And
That's
that
why we
concerns
have a
me.
contract.
And that's why I'm pushing for the other ones.
Yep.
You guys
Transparency.
do the work, I understand, I get that, and I appreciate everything you do.
Because there are people who show up like these people and.
And I like your approach to the budget too. So, and we need to start implementing that. And we have to have a longer term plan, not just, we can have annual contracts, but we have to have a long-term plan.
Well, the other thing that Lauren added as a message was that he said that we should have a report from the fire department at the end of each year.
Financial report.
Financial report, too.
When we get this budgeting down, get the budget down, each year it should be a matter of updating what you already have, based on your experience, and any inflationary factors, et cetera. And then it's up to the municipalities, it's our responsibility to decide how we fund that.
Yep.
I also agree with you one other point. You should not have to come in here and ask for money for a piece of equipment. Once we allocate money, it's the fire company's job to prioritize their spending, decide what they need to buy, and then do it. Because all it does is encumber you to having to go through that process.
It's the way it's been done long before I became an elected official.
And-
And it was done, I know why it was done back in the day when I was a manager. But if you show us that that's no longer an issue, and you honestly believe in your heart it's no longer an issue, I don't have a problem cutting the money loose.
And I also want to make one other point, the private contributions, memberships, let's call them. I'm not talking about carnivals and fun, that you guys end up running yourself. I agree, that's not something you should have to worry about. The private contributions, the subscriptions that people pay, that needs to be kept up as well. You know, because we can't do it just with one, we gotta do it with both. It's a combination, actually.
I think maybe in one of these upcoming meetings, we should bring in the percentages, because we're right around the EMS with the 20% return.
Is it that bad?
It's, yeah.
I gotta find out what Warriors Mark's doing, because every time they speak up and need money, the money just flows in from the public. It's crazy.
I truthfully think it's the age groups and the people that are willing to give and have the heart to give, always give.
I would like to
And-
have some kind of illustration for the property owners in these municipalities
Yeah.
as to how having or not having a volunteer fire company impacts their insurance premiums. Because I think if they truly understood that, then they would realize that it's less expensive to pay for a fire company than it is to pay increased premiums. If you can actually keep your insurance.
Yeah.
Because some cases, some insurance companies will drop you if you don't have the
They
protection.
will, a lot of them will. However, in some of the age groups that are out there, they just don't care unless that bill shows up in the mail.
Unless their cell phone gets cut
Yeah,
off. they
And
don't
then at
care.
that point, it's a big deal, but, you know,
The other point,
That's the
John, I
problem.
wanna make is this, with the Port Matilda Fire Relief Association. I'm going to attend that meeting on the 21st, it's 7 o'clock.
yep.
And I want to know, I want answers as to why they're not giving the money to the fire companies as they're required to do. What is the problem there?
By law.
Why are they withholding, and what does that money get used for? It gets used for your PPE, it gets used for specific things that you vitally need to operate. It's state money being passed through the municipalities, and it's going to them, and they're holding it. Why?
I would recommend that you go to the Auditor General's website, pull the reports for the last couple years, and you'll see the Auditor General's outcome.
I have never heard of the Firemen's Relief Association sitting on the money and refusing to allocate to the fire company. It's just ridiculous.
But there's another hole in it,
comment.
you know, a hole in the plan, right?
Um,
I'm sorry,
Go ahead, Brian.
just to give you an example there, we submitted an invoice for protective gear, coat and pants for them, and they rejected it, so we had to pay it out of fundraising. But that's what they're
But
supposed to.
that's what it's there for.
Exactly.
And why are they doing it, and why are they
We're,
getting
we're,
away with it?
we're gonna get to the bottom of that too. So hopefully,
It's a significant amount of money too, it's not just peanuts.
If they're supposed, I'm confused, these firemen's relief, whatever it is, what right do they have to hold the money?
they don't, as far as we're concerned.
When are you going to that meeting, Ron?
The 21st of
Where
December,
is it?
7 PM at the fire hall.
Let me know. I'll sit in the
Get
back
Frank
row.
on it.
I don't wanna scare them too badly, so.
Hey, you know, it's our money, I mean, you know.
Well, it's state money, and the Auditor General they've done an audit, State Auditor General, and they've got deficiencies that they need to correct. And I wanna know why it isn't being done, why the problem isn't being fixed.
I wanna go.
All right,
All right,
you know where it is, and you know when it is.
okay, let's get back to the budget here. Does anybody on the board feel that we need to amend the budget to increase the monies for next year? I, for one, do, for the fire.
I would say
operation.
to match what we gave this year for now, and make those changes, those additional allocations next year at least, at the minimum.
Well, this would be on next year's deal.
But we have other pots we can pull it from.
Right.
Right.
Do we need to amend the budget? We don't need to.
We don't need to
Amending
if
the
we
budget
pull it from the
requires
unencumbered
delay.
funds.
And also from the fire protection fund, which is dedicated just to,
Yeah.
for fire things, which we cut, which I would like to see us put that back, that dedicated fund, so that when this comes up in the future, because then those monies can accumulate in there for things like this, instead of we
But
put it
I
back in
think
the
what we're
general
talking about
fund.
doing, as long as those guys are responsible, actually letting them handle the money.
Well, that's just making their contract bigger than that covers operating and capital.
Right.
Not,
They would
not
have control of their
differentiating between
capital,
the
and if
two.
they need chrome lug nuts or a new hose or whatever, they could just go and buy it. They don't have to come to us.
And that's something we can do next year, but I think to Brett's point, we have areas where we can pull it
can
from.
amend
In
the
my
budget to
mind,
a
the
percent,
easiest
right?
solution would be to pass the budget as is, but verbally commit through a vote tonight the extra money, So it's set in stone and they don't have to worry you're gonna renege just to get through tonight.
Hey, I'm okay with that.
That would be the easiest solution.
I don't have any problem with that either.
Well, let's have a motion to approve the budget as written, and then after that, we'll do a motion to allocate additional
Is
funds.
the hearing closed?
Yeah, the hearing's closed.
Okay, so moved.
And a motion to adopt the
Second.
budget. Got a second? Any discussion by the board? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Now, we need a motion to allocate additional funds. Well, let's do this two things. One, you said we got $53,000 in the capital fire reserve account.
Correct.
Do we want to allocate that to the fire company before the end of the year? And if so, do you, I'll just make the motion. I make a motion that we,
Well, before we do that.
the end of this year, because we have the money.
Well, we have money in different funds, but
No, this is the fire fund.
I
That's
understand
gonna be
that.
for capital projects. If they think they got a piece of equipment, you apparently have a piece of equipment you want to buy, correct?
No, well, not right now. We want to save that money for future purchases.
You already bought the buggy thing you were looking at?
No,
I think
we're in the committee process. Look,
like 53,000, Dave, is a pretty big chunk of
I
money.
know, but it's their money.
It's
We control the
both
purse string.
fire company's money.
Right, I wasn't gonna give it all to them. I was gonna
It-
divvy it up
and
in the appropriate
The
formula
other
as
thing
per the
is,
contract.
keep in mind also that should be a distributed approach. 5 municipalities again, I'm gonna point that out. I don't have a problem with a significant number increase. I thought we were talking somewhere between 18,000 and 25,000, now we're talking about 53,000.
Well, no, that's the fire reserve money. That wasn't the other discussion, but, all right, well, let me put a motion out there. I move that we commit to allocating next year out of the unencumbered funds, the deficit spending funds that we have for carryover, $25,000 to be appropriated to the two fire companies.
For
As per-
capital
For
expenditures.
capital expenditures as per our contract, and that they meet the requirements, I think it's section 1533 of 218 of the Pennsylvania Township Second Class Code.
I just want a quick clarification on that. Is that 25 each or 25 total?
25 total.
Okay,
We'll distribute in the same proportion.
okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Can you request that both fire companies show you their audit, that they get audited every
They
year?
will have to get the money.
Yes.
Under 1533,
I
they
think
have
that's
to
what
do
we
it.
need to do. I mean,
And
I agree, everyone needs to be responsible, and they need to be audited, and they need to give us the audit.
And we need to work together to gather that.
Well, someday when I'm
information.
not on television, you and I can talk about the audit we tried to have done years ago. You will be amazed.
So Dave, this is the 25,000, that's to get at the end of this year, then we still have funds that we can.
No, this would be for next year,
Oh, this
that we're
would be
gonna
for
spend in
next year.
2023.
Right, and this is just one, like to get them started, this
This
isn't
is
limiting
just-
us.
just
We
a
can-
boost. We can
Because
give it
there's
to 'em
still
in
the fire
January.
relief money, there's still
Yeah.
other money there if we need it, this
Yeah.
is out of the unencumbered.
That
Okay,
gets their
great,
allocation above what it was this year.
correct, okay, thank you.
Significantly, I think.
Do we hear a second?
I'll second.
Moved and second. Any discussion by the board? Hearing no discussion, call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now, on the question of the fireman's fund, if you guys are gonna hold on to it, can we wait till January?
Yep.
So that the board can, maybe we'll see what happens with the other townships in this next meeting.
Yep.
But I will tell you that my vote will be to allocate the money to the fire companies, because it's your money.
And like I said, it's a savings account for us for capital expenses.
Right. So-
By waiting that long, it doesn't.
You know what they say, you can spend it any way you wanna spend it, but you can only spend it once, so.
That's right.
All right. We good? Good? Next up, consent agenda. This is to approve the general fund in the amount of $39,528.73, fire protection fund in the amount of $17,014.68, park and recreation fund in $29,99.62, state highway liquid fuels in the amount of $1,023.25. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion by the board? Hearing none, call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Action items. Bituminous and aggregate award bid for 2023. Amy, do you, or is Brett handling the details? Thank you, Mr. Kisvari.
My pleasure.
We'll probably be calling on you to help us with this financial stuff, so.
You got my cell number.
Yep, I do.
Give me a call. Can't even call collect.
Oh, I'll take that.
Did you throw that to me, Dave?
Yeah.
Well, up on the screen, you can see primarily GOH.
Get you a pair of binoculars.
Well, it doesn't matter. I have it in front of me. GOH was your primary award winner, along with, except for your bituminous prime coats, that goes to your Midland and your Russell Standard. Nothing out of the ordinary other than your standard increases, which were expected. Later on, Public Works will kind of get into how they're trying to work around the price increase to make us our most bang for our buck, but they are how they are.
All right. Any comment or concern by our road man at the end of the table? Or road men, road supervisor?
Everything looks okay?
No, it's pretty much cut and dry.
Okay.
That's where the world's at.
Do I hear a motion to accept the lowest bid?
I'll move to accept the bid.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion by the board? Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. We did the budget approval. I guess we need to do it as a resolution.
Correct. Now you just have to go through the resolution.
Okay. Motion to approve a budget, or resolution 2022-29, fiscal year 2023 budget. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution? Patty made a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Ron seconded. Moving seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the question. All those in favor of resolution 2022-29 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved. Real estate taxes is set for fiscal year 2023. Be resolution 2022-30. Do I hear a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Yes.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Resolution 2022-31, appointment of BBD and LLP to conduct the 2022 audit. Now, I know Brett worked overtime trying to find somebody that wanted to audit the township.
We actually came in under what we had to pay this year, so I'm pretty excited. The next 3 years are locked in unofficially,
Good.
where it should hopefully work out for both parties.
Excellent work as usual.
I move that we approve the resolution.
Do I hear a second? Moved and seconded. Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Appoint a representative of the CNET Board of Directors.
Mr. Chair, I was gonna volunteer to represent the township at the CNET board.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any suggestions or
Want to do it?
wanna volunteer?
No, it's my understanding this can be a board member or a citizen.
That could be anybody.
Is there a difference in any kind of voting authority or,
I don't think on this board, no.
okay. If there's someone else that wants to volunteer, that's fine, that's
This-
great too.
This one meets quarterly,
Yep,
4 times a year.
Correct.
But without, pardon?
They did give us a list of the meeting dates.
They did, and I know it starts in January, and I believe then it's your typical, your April.
January 10th, I think, is the first one.
Yeah, and I
Is it
think
in the evening?
that I'm not aware of.
It's
It
midday.
was in Cindy's email.
They don't have any free parking, I can tell you that.
Unfortunately, I do not. If there is citizen interest, this is not a dire
We don't
need.
have to
We
do
can
it
put it
today.
on the 22nd. We can table it if there is some citizen interest.
I mean, if people wanna think about it.
I would be interested,
Okay.
but I'm on 2 other boards, so it would depend.
Right, and that's why I said the board can table it if that's what they choose.
And I don't wanna take it away.
I'll look and see if I can find Cindy's email.
Why don't we, you want to table it for tonight? We can pick it up at the next meeting.
Yeah, as long as they have it by January.
Well, it gives people time to volunteer, and we can decide who we want to pick to do it. I guess that's the process.
Unless you got your heart set on it, Ron.
I don't.
I can tell Chuck's just aching at the end of the table.
ditching, but I don't wanna step on any toes here.
All right, let's table that
There's
item.
a lot of committees that we have to have people to attend. So.
Okay. Next up, treasurer's report, October, November.
So we're gonna table that one.
Yep.
Well, I'll skip October's because it's come and gone, because November, the funds, total township funds by the end of November was 2.6 million. The only other thing I want to touch on during this segment is I did hear from First National Bank. The payoff, the way the invoice is currently set up, if you remember in the budget, you guys are discussing paying off the park loan at the beginning of the year. The payoff amount, I finally got an official in writing, $280,605.95, but it does have to be paid off by January 4th, which pretty much means I'd have to come in the new year and cut a check instantly.
Are you willing to do that?
Well, I'm more than willing to do it if that's what the board still wants to do. I just finally got the official number.
I missed that. Can you,
What part did you miss?
the whole thing?
The whole thing, okay.
I was thinking, I was looking at something else and
If you remember in the budget that you passed earlier, you are going to deficit spend and pay off the debt.
yeah.
I got the official park number at $280,605.95 if paid off by January 4th of next year, because that's how the invoicing works. They have to.
Then if not,
If not, your park fund that you did not budget any expenses will have to continue to pay the monthly payments.
oh, that's
until-
our only window to pay it off in full.
No, it's not your only window. It would just, that would have to pay a month and then it'd take you to February.
We have to
for-
recalculate the total payout.
Right, it's gonna recalculate.
Can we
Might as
do
well
it?
just pay it.
Yeah.
Is it a problem to do it?
No, it's just, you'll have to approve to do it. I'm just
I
letting
think-
you know.
I'd like to move, I would move that we approve that, payment
I would second it.
to pay off the debt.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion by the board? Hearing none, call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's done.
Does that mean the auto metal improvement is all paid off?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Anything else, Brett?
Nope, and the tax collector report is kinda just ho-hum being the end of the year.
Okay, we'll take ho-hum.
How are we percentage-wise with total, in terms of collection?
We're on pace. Right now, it's about 95.6 to 7%. I haven't ran it in the last couple weeks, but we're on pace.
All right, no permits were issued. Public Works. Don't fall asleep down there. I know it's been exciting tonight.
So obviously the big one for this time of year, we've switched over to winter maintenance. Just trying to get stuff installed, cleaned up, working properly, getting trucks repaired. But as kind of Brett touched on, the big one we've been trying to do is we've expanded the parking lot now that we had the topsoil removed, and have been stockpiling stone for stormwater projects to finish up for next year due to delays and pipe and things like that we've had for this summer. So we're trying to make sure that we stretch our funding because of stone increases and things here for next year. So I think we're doing pretty good there. We've got a nice stockpile to work with come spring, and definitely
The
going a
pipe
lot
coming
further
in,
than.
supposedly coming in?
Sorry, what was
Are we
that?
supposed to get the pipe that we needed?
We do have it now.
Oh, it did
We
come
do
in
have
after
it,
the
yeah.
season's over.
It just
okay.
came late enough that we were getting ready to switch trucks over to the winter maintenance. And at that point, we lose functionality of that. And we don't wanna.
I had a request from Worth Township the other night about Orchard Road extension out to Beckwith Road. In the past, the Halfmoon Township has plowed that because it's really stupid to turn the truck around when you can just drive straight and come down through. They'd asked if we could do that portion of the road and save them a 4-mile trip out of the way and a steep 600-foot elevation climb up the side of the mountain. I thought I would bring that forward to the board to authorize that.
I would just comment that I believe we've had this discussion about the condition of that piece of road. And I think it would, in my opinion, would be incumbent, and you can disagree with me because you guys know more about roads than I do. But what I thought I heard was the road ought to really be, stone ought to be put in, it ought to be graded so that we don't ruin our equipment trying to plow the road. I just drove on that road today, and it's pretty rough.
It's a piece of junk.
Yeah,
It's pretty
so
rough.
my opinion on that is, I think first of all, it's a great idea. We're up there, you know, it's very easy for us to take care of it, and it's kind of a connector for us from the top of Orchard Road to get back over to U Street. That being said, that road is in very poor condition. I'm concerned about our equipment. You know, I do not want to be ruining equipment that we're finally getting in good working order and, you know, costing us our, I gotta look at a maintenance budget and, you know, I wanna stretch that as far as possible. I don't wanna be breaking equipment.
Right.
So, like I said, I think it's a great idea, but I believe that road needs brought up to where it should be. And, you know, just make sure we're not out there destroying stuff.
And we're talking about stone being brought in and
Yeah.
leveling, grading it.
Yeah,
and-
regraded. There's some big rocks sticking up,
Right.
and of course that causes concern for catching the plow cutting edges.
So that would be Mark's responsibility if they did.
Well, that's actually Worth Township.
Worth Townships, yeah.
Oh, it's Worth. Okay.
I agree with plowing it. I just would like to see the road brought up so that we don't damage it.
Which there again, this is my personal opinion. Obviously, it's up to you guys. I have no problem helping bring it up to condition. You know, if we have a different piece of equipment that might help them do that, like I said, that's my personal opinion here. But it should be done, and we can
They
definitely
could
talk
help
about that in
defray the
future.
cost of the material.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that would be
I
their
would make a motion
responsibility.
that we plow it if they're willing to assist with materials and manpower to improve the road to a state that the,
But I don't think that'll happen this year though for this.
right, but it could.
I-
If the weather stays the way it is and they wanna run the machine up there, that'll save them a lot of money in the long
Right.
run.
It'd be tough this time of year to make that work, but it's doable.
If
So
they're
I think
serious
it's
about
something
it.
to discuss.
They'd
Yeah.
have to put out all that money for stone, that's the biggest thing, because what he's saying, you know, he'd take the grader up there and grade it if they would supply the material.
Right.
'Cause that's the biggest thing, there's big rocks sticking up, and those plows have got.
And it is another way out for our citizens back there. if
It's
they
a
need to get
throughway.
out.
If it's a decent road, it's a throughway.
As a resident who lives on Orchard Road, I'm just gonna toss something out there. I do agree that that section of Orchard Road is in very, very poor condition. And I hear your concerns about upgrading it, which again, I don't disagree with. And this is kind of like a bit of a loophole caveat here. If you upgrade the road and make it better, my fear is it's gonna increase the drug activity that's going on at the top of the road currently. It's a really bad problem right now.
Not aware of that.
It's very much a problem. Pretty much where the gravel ends and the pavement begins, there's a little set-off kind of in the woods. You'll often see cars parked up there, people getting high. It's a real problem.
Well, the question is, I guess then, with all those things considered, does it need to be maintained or need to be functional as a road? I mean, if
You
we've
could
got
close
a
it to no
problem that
winter
we would
maintenance.
exacerbate by fixing the road,
Derek, go ahead.
You could close it to no winter maintenance, but it would hinder the response of the fire department.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of.
Because there was a wildfire.
well, that answers that
Cherry
question.
Lane.
Yeah, I know, because I've thought of that too.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we're talking a major upgrade of road conditions, but I appreciate you letting us know about the drugs because we've put cameras up there before and I think we need to do it again for the
Yeah.
state police.
Yep,
So-
yep, but I know that the state police have been called a few times for
Right.
the drug activity up
But if
there.
we got cameras and can see license plates.
Yeah,
and-
it kinda, it's cyclical, but it's increasing.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
If you fix the roads, more traffic, not a lot more traffic, but a little more traffic, you might not have the drug problem up there.
That's
Because there's
true,
gonna be
too.
more people driving past.
And that emergency response factor is very important, so.
Okay, well, we have a motion to allow the.
Before we get too far on that, Brett reminded me too, we need to make sure that our working agreements with various townships, Worth, and we'll throw Taylor in there as well. We need to make sure those are all, updated and that we have everything covered that we need to.
So we need to get this in writing, put it on paper.
Correct, which it's as simple as replacing the Where's Mark agreement. That's how, Where's Mark? Taylor, that's how we wrote it.
Well, I said at the,
Right,
Old Eagle
we can
COG,
agree.
we had the agreement with Warriors Mark, and just to let people know, and I think we.
And I gave them to Derek to get them into the right hands,
Okay.
and
Well,
they are.
let me amend my motion to include that agreement gets signed with the other township. And if we can't do it this year, we can't do it this year, but at least we got a path forward, because like I said, it makes no sense to make them run up that mountain to do 800 feet of road and then leave. It's a waste of fuel, so.
Yeah,
And we
I-
gotta
I
drive
feel
out
that-
there anyway, so.
I feel that we should, you know, get things started to make sure that we have a good working relationship with our surrounding townships.
All right.
You know, whether it's that direction or, you know, keep a relationship with the, you know, state college side of things with COG. You know, obviously there's limits and things, and we need to make sure that we have our bases covered, but I feel that we should work together. But like I said, that, there again, that's my personal opinion, and that's up to you guys.
Well, I'll put you and Brett in charge of that. That's my motion. Anybody want to
Yay.
second it?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion by the board? Call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Let's see. Anything in the budget report?
Just 442,000 to the good and 1.4 million in general as of
Okay.
December 2nd.
All right, supervisors reports.
Dave,
Oh, go ahead.
I found in relation to the CNET Board of Directors, I found Cindy Hahn's email, and she basically said that it's a term of 1 year. The CNET Board of Directors meets quarterly at 7 p.m. The meeting dates for 2023 are Tuesday, January 10th, Tuesday, April 11th, Tuesday, July 18th, and Tuesday, October 10th. And it says board members are generally asked to serve on a policy review meeting each year, generally in the month of February or March. Meetings are held at the State College Municipal Building and usually last no longer than 1.5 hours. Duties of the board include approval of the annual budget and capital purchase plan, review of several policies each year, and the annual performance evaluation of the executive director. The township may appoint anyone it chooses. The appointee may be an elected official, a staff member, or a member of the community. Please let me know if you have an appointment. The next meeting of the CNET board is January 10th, so ideally the appointment would be made in December or at the January 3rd meeting.
Well, I was gonna say, or we can do it at the organization.
Does it give a time, Patty?
7 p.m.
PM.
Oh, 7 p.m., okay.
Okay, there you have it. All right, supervisors' reports. Anybody have anything to report?
My committees, COG didn't meet. I did attend, though, a joint meeting of public safety. I think it was public safety and Lucy. And there were all the emergency response people at various levels within the county were there. And they gave a pretty good presentation. Police were there, fire response was there, EMS response was there, emergency management was there. Steve Bear, of course, retired. And the state police were also represented. So I thought it was a pretty good discussion. I think the Center Region is a pretty solid organization as far as emergency response, emergency management. I did point out at the group that the one enforcement agency that wasn't represented was Pennsylvania Game Commission, and we do have significant presence of game lands within the Center Region. So, and they do play a role in law enforcement. So, I think they plan on including them in the future in these discussions as a significant partner. And the game wardens have additional powers. I guess over the years they've revised their powers. They can assist the state police. They can assist police in investigations and things. So they are sworn officers. So I thought that was a pretty good overall discussion on emergency management and response.
Any other supervisors? I will just I was gonna say
Yeah.
that Roseanne and I have been working diligently to try to save the ambulance company. You heard most of it tonight, but we're not gonna let it go. It's gonna be constantly on our radar screen to keep them up and running as much and as long as possible. And if we see an inkling that they're not gonna be able to make it and we can't make it happen, then we will go to Plan B. But at this point, I want 100% dedication from the supervisors, the staff, and the citizens to back that ambulance company. And I have a check for Mr. Bonsall, but he left tonight, so I'll get it to him tomorrow. But if everybody can go and write a personal check, it would be appreciated.
I wanted to point out something else though, as the rep to the Upper Bowl Eagle Cog, we had that meeting Tuesday night, and I thought it was a pretty good discussion. Derek was there. And I think we made the points that we needed to make with regard to the support of the EMS, support of the fire companies. I thought the general feeling or general attitude or opinions of the other board members was improved, but I still see an indifference with the other people sitting there, and
somewhat.
And that's why I think a joint meeting with all the municipalities, the boards of all the municipalities, needs to happen, so we have a complete understanding of what we're required to do. It's not something we can decide to do or not do. It's something we have to do. So, you know, and I also understand that if, you know, you can't blood out of a stone and you can't force other municipalities to do something. So I understand we're probably gonna end up in a situation where we have to, you know, spend money, additional money to, you know, to compensate, let's say. I hate to use that word compensate, but I think the effort needs to be made to have an understanding of why we need to provide the funding based on what the fire company and the EMS tells us they need. We can't tell them what they need. So that's just what I want to say about it. I think it was a productive meeting in some ways. I'm still frustrated with a lot of what I've heard, but I think we can make progress.
Especially now. Yes, Patty.
I'm on the Facilities Committee and the Finance Committee. The Facilities Committee, the regular scheduled meeting was canceled at the beginning of this month, but that was because the main issue at this point was the Whitehall Road Regional Park, and there was a special general forum meeting on Wednesday at noon, to call the question about releasing additional funds to complete Phase 1 of the Whitehall Regional Park. The Whitehall Regional Park is about Phase 1 is about 72% complete, and then we needed at this point to tap into the reserve funds that were available to the park, and there was some issues with getting that released, but Wednesday finally, Halfmoon does not vote on that, but I'm a member of the committees that were involved in that, so I was there. But the 5 municipalities that do vote on that did unanimously vote to release those funds. So Whitehall Regional Park Phase 1 will continue and hopefully be completed. I think final completion is for 2024, but a good portion of it will be done in 2023. And in finance today, we started reevaluating what was done in 2022 for the budget process. We're looking at revamping some of the processes for COG budgeting, and there'll be more to come on that. But we made some inroads. We had an extended meeting this morning to talk about that while it was all still fresh in our minds. So,
Patty, there was an issue with regard to the park project and some administrative personnel issues. I know you can't talk about that stuff, and it's, you know, personnel issues being confidential and all, but has that particular issue been resolved?
Ron, I believe what you're referring to, and this is public knowledge, the Parks and Recreation, the director resigned, and then our project manager on the Whitehall Road Regional Park also resigned. He submitted his 2-week notice. we have put in place, the facilities coordinator has stepped up, and the finance person has also, they've made some adjustments within staff, and I believe we have that covered. And there's also a temporary executive, or director for parks in place. And they've changed how the procedural process for approving the funding and things, and the, what's the word I'm looking for? Not the invoices, but when they have things they didn't anticipate, that
Contingency funding and
contingency,
things like
that's
that. Yeah.
that stuff, that has been changed. So I think we're on a pretty good path right now, but you're right, because of a lot of some turbulence within changing in staffing, we've had to change how that was structured. So I think, so that was some of the reasons that it was taking a little while to get this worked out, but now we're in a good place, and those funds have been released, so we can pay what we need and move forward with one of the issues that happened there is they hit a lot more stone than they anticipated, so there's additional costs with removing the stone when they're making the fields and getting the surfaces level. So that was one. And there was also some permitting, and they found some water pipes that they didn't even think were there because it was farmland, and yeah, there was just some issues that you hit, so.
Okay.
Anything for the good and welfare? Diversity, equity, inclusion. Ms. Squire still here, or is she bail?
I'm speaking tonight, but
Oh,
don't
okay.
worry, I have no resolution or
Okay.
proclamation.
All right. Well, that's
So
good.
I just have a super quick announcement that December 10th is Human Rights Day, and that's put on by, not put on. That's from the United Nations, and the 2022 slogan is dignity, freedom, and justice for all. And what's very important is next year on December 10th, 2023 is the 75th anniversary of the day the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I'm just going to say, it's a milestone document which proclaims the inalienable rights that everyone is entitled to as a human being, regardless of race, color, religion, sex, language, political or other opinion, national, social origin, property, birth, or status. And this is very interesting. It's available in more than 500 languages and is the most translated document in the world. So this is coming up, it's coming up December 10th as just a regular anniversary, but over the course of 2023, it's the 75th anniversary. So and if you go to their website, United Nations, and they talk about it, they have all sorts of links, all sorts of information, beautiful photography, essays, a campaign website, campaign materials, key messages. So I know we're just a small township in central Pennsylvania, but we can certainly embody those things. And that's all I have to say.
No disagreement. Okay, move to adjourn. Anybody?
We adjourn.
Well, here's a second. Moving second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks for coming.